Hey guys, Pete here. We're here to talk about the penultimate episode of Better Call Saul. There's only one more left, and this one set things up in a way that was absolutely satisfying as far as I was concerned. It's just me and Gil today. I invited him here so that we can talk about the episode, talk about what we think is going on with each of the characters. They sort of got everything down to just two of them now, which is pretty insane when you think about how big this universe is and how many characters we've met throughout both series. There's only really those two to think about, and we're going to do that. We're going to about that today. We're going to answer your questions. I think usually I'll throw it out to you and you'll do your what you thought of the episode overall. And I think since it's just me and you today, why don't we I wanted to talk about Kim a little bit. Kim in Florida especially before we get into answering the questions. And we were talking a little bit behind the scenes before we started, and I think the first time I watched this, I was sort of like, what's going on with Kim? She's not in hiding. Obviously, Saul practiced law. He was a public figure. There was no reason to think that the police might come after her. There may have been a little bit of the idea that the cartel could be, there, but not really. For the most part, she was living in this completely kind of opposite way. And it's funny because we have, Gene in the cold and her in the hot down in Florida, so it's just like night and day. And he's jumping into this idea of like being Saul to cope with the loss and all the other stuff that happened. And she is just living a normal life. And it was really kind of off-putting because if she's not hiding, then why is she acting like this? Is she punishing herself? Is she afraid of what she might do? She's not really helping anybody. She's not really doing anything. She's just sort of existing. And it really took some time to digest. So why don't you introduce yourself? Tell us what you thought about the episode, and let's talk a little bit about Kim in Florida before we get into all the questions.
Sounds great. First off, Pete, thank you for having me on again. And for those of you who don't know me, I'm Gil. I am from the YouTube channel One Take, where we talk about Better Call Saul and a bunch of other stuff. And you may also know me from the podcast Saulcast, where we talk about Better Call Saul every week, at least until next week. And I still can't believe there's only one episode left. I absolutely loved last night's episode. It's another one that I would call a masterpiece. And I think it works so well because it builds on what we've been watching over the last 7 years. It was a very suspenseful episode to me, even though there wasn't a lot of violence in it. There were, of course, a couple of moments in the episode that hinted at a little bit of potential violence. But for me, the suspense came from Better Call Saul's strongest trait, which is its focus on character. And we have been watching Jimmy and Kim both deal with trauma in their lives, and both have, to some extent, kind of shoved that stuff down inside of themselves, especially Jimmy. So it feels like they both have trauma, guilt, and a lot of difficult things in their lives that are kind of trapped behind these floodgates, holding those emotions back. And the suspense for me is waiting for those floodgates to crack open. When I was watching Kim this episode, I kept waiting for something to make her think of Saul, something to make her think of Howard. We'll, of course, get into more detail. What is Kim doing there in Florida? But I think broadly, she has erased her previous life. And I was afraid for the moment where that previous life might come back to haunt her. And when it does, we kind of see that dam break and we see those emotions come out. So I found the episode very suspenseful, just waiting for these characters to deal with their past traumas. We saw a lot of it from Kim this episode, and I am still I'm still afraid of what's going to happen when Jimmy possibly faces a similar situation where he maybe finally faces up to some of the trauma in his past. And I'll just add, the black and white has been such an interesting choice from the beginning. But this episode is where I really saw how it helps the show. A lot of time has passed from the events that we watched in this series, about 6 years, right? And you definitely feel the passage of time, but I think you feel it a little bit more because of the black and white. It makes everything we're seeing here feel so separate and so distant from those past events. So when these things, Kim gets the call from Jimmy and it's that past coming back to haunt her, it truly feels like ancient history. Somebody on my live stream last night mentioned they can't believe that Nacho died in episode 3 this season. It feels like that was 2 or 3 seasons ago. So I think these characters feel a lot of distance from these past events. And thanks to the black and white, we do too. And when those past events come knocking on their doors, it feels like an invasion into this black and white space for us. And I think that gets us to feel a bit of what they feel, where it feels like an invasion into kind of this epilogue to the exciting part of their lives. So very suspenseful episode for me, very tragic, very emotional episode. And I loved it.
Yeah, you were talking a little bit about invasion, and that's what I was thinking about as far as, Kim's little life there and what she built up. And, Jimmy waited a long time, and we saw that whenever they did the signing of the divorce papers, that he wasn't ready to look at that. He wasn't ready to, face what was really happening. And so we see him in this black and white life, like you pointing out there. And, that's what it felt like, is that he was pushing his way in there, and he knew it. You know what I mean? Like, there's a part of him that knew that. So when he doesn't get a reaction, he's the one that actually escalates everything and freaks out. And that becomes the catalyst for what she decides to do. But I agree 100% that is something that's totally different in black and white. And it's also because it's, that it has that stark feeling of like, there's not that many choices, there's not that much stimulation, nothing else, like you think about, I looked at the pictures, the behind the scenes pictures that they put out, and, seeing Kim in with the new hairstyle and the new look, seeing that in color and seeing that in Florida, it would have played totally differently if it wasn't in black and white. Right. You know what I mean? It seemed, there's nothing realistically, there's nothing wrong with the life she's leading. We know it's different than how we met her, so it feels off to us. But it's a normal life. But you put that in black and white, you put that in outside of Albuquerque, outside of Omaha, and it really does make a difference. And one of the things you're talking about, suspense, and I think what really dawned on me towards the end of this episode was these characters are doing exactly what they're supposed to be doing. What makes sense for what we've been told about them, what we've watched for all these seasons. And yet we've been watching, we've been following along, we've been rooting for different ones at different times. And, we set up this expectation that isn't really in line with what should or shouldn't happen. You know what I mean? And so, by the end, I'm thinking, okay, well, that kind of changes everything, but it doesn't, because that they set that up so well that it's just the characters being what they are, and our expectations, sort of having to readjust to be like, okay, yeah, this is where we're at right now. Jimmy has a phone cord wrapped around his head, like, hands like a garrote, and he could possibly kill legendary actress, Carol Burnett.
Mm-hmm.
So it's an amazing thing that they're doing here. I'm really glad that we're getting to watch it live.
Yeah,
and,
I think
talk about it.
I and many people have thrown the word redemption around a lot, wanting to see Jimmy redeem himself, wanting to see him get away from his bad habits, the way that he deals with trauma, basically by not dealing with it. And the question is, what will teach him the lesson to stop dealing with the problems in his life by becoming Saul Goodman, shutting down his feelings, and essentially becoming the sociopath that can say to his now ex-wife, have a good life, and, sayonara. We want to see that, but what does it take to shake somebody out of that? And apparently working with Walter White, Heisenberg, meth kingpin, and losing everything isn't enough to shake him out of that. So what's it going to take? And is there anything that can save him at this point? And just to your point, we shouldn't have expected him to learn anything. I mean, time and time again, we've seen him fall into this pattern. And so he's just continuing to fall into this pattern. But the magic trick of the show is that they still get us to hope. When he found out that this guy has cancer, I'm sitting there saying, okay, of course he's going to walk away now. He's not going to take advantage of this guy. But of course he does. Right. So it's exactly what you said. The show is getting us to watch with suspense, hope for a certain outcome. And then the actual outcome occurs and you say, well, I mean, it makes total sense that it went that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's why I found the whole thing with Kim fascinating, because like I mentioned, she's not hiding, and there's that idea of, is she punishing herself, like in the same way that Jimmy throws himself into these scams to just sort of distract? Is she trying to somehow not necessarily redeem herself, but take on that responsibility of the harm that she's caused? And it's hard to say exactly, like a lot of this stuff that I'm thinking about now, like I was thinking right before we started, there's a lot I'm still kind of processing about this, and it's not necessarily because it was somehow unclear. It's just that so many things are still up in the air as far as what's going to happen next week, and it comes down to what you're saying there. Like, is there a thing that can shift Jimmy? And we did see that crack of light at the end of the episode whenever he doesn't kill Marion, or he doesn't stop her from calling, using the life alert. He certainly could have, and it didn't have to be as violent or as extreme as him killing her, but he could have stopped that whole thing from happening. And we saw, I think Jimmy McGill, I think we saw Jimmy there, and he covered a lot of distance internally from where he was in the last two episodes to get to that place. But I don't even know what that means, like you say redemption, and it's sort of like, well, what would that even look like? Or maybe the best that we can hope for is just kind of relief, because it looks absolutely painful the way that he's living his life. You know what I mean? Right. He's not just making bad decisions and causing harm for other people, but it's a torturous existence, don't you think?
Oh yeah, for sure. And I think for Kim too, I think there's nothing, and Vince Gilligan said this in a sort of defensive way on the Insider podcast, there's nothing intrinsically wrong with the life that Kim is living. I think it's easy on these shows where we identify with these people that have these exciting, very unusual lives. When you compare that to the normies in the show, like Frank chomping down on his cinnamon rolls, it's easy to look at them and say, wow, look at those boring, just torturous, repetitive lives they're leading. But I think that's because we're seeing it through these characters' eyes. And for Kim, this is a torturous existence for her because, like you pointed out earlier, Kim has always been this self-assured person who makes choices. The old Kim, when she was asked strawberry or vanilla, she would have had an answer and would have had a great reason and a very convincing reason for which flavor she chose. But she is not allowing herself to make choices. She has this great gift where she can defend people who need the help and nobody else is giving them that help. And she's depriving herself in the world of that talent. So this world is a torturous one for her. I mean, that's why the black and white works for us. That's why the focus on the mundane works really well. I love that moment where that one character is saying, I was going to try almond butter today instead of peanut, and then it just cuts off. Mm-hmm. And they're focusing on those mundane details because that's the torture of being Kim right now. She's stuck in this boring existence where she doesn't get to be who she wants to be.
Yeah, the Miracle Whip was the one that really hit me when I watched it the first time. It's like that, not to put down Miracle Whip or anything like that. I mean, money was tight when I was growing up, and we definitely had it around our household and stuff. But there's a big difference in those two things. You know what I mean? And whenever she didn't even really consider, she just sort of deferred to her new boyfriend, and just sort of waited to see if it was okay or not from him. I was seriously like, what's going on with this character?
Right.
And then I was in that same part where they were talking about the almond butter, she eventually addresses it as she's eating. It's like, okay, there's still something in there, I mean, she still understands, she's still experiencing life. It's just that she's depriving herself of that idea of making choices. She doesn't want to make the wrong choices, so she just defers the whole thing. And it's exactly opposite to the person that we've met and what's made her a dynamic and lovable character.
Right. And I think, why is she doing this? You've mentioned a couple of possibilities, and I think probably they're both in the mix. And I think if you were to take Kim and ask her, why are you doing this? I don't know that she would be totally clear in her mind. So probably the answer is mixed. But you mentioned the possibility that she's afraid of making choices, because the last time she did that, it got someone killed. And the other possibility is that she's punishing herself. It's Luke Skywalker in The Last Jedi. This is a self-imposed exile. And I'll say that's probably the reasoning that most resonates with me. This does feel like she is punishing herself. She is going by the name Kim Wexler. She is not on the run. I think anybody outside law enforcement that would want some kind of not even retribution, I guess, but want to take her out because she knows too much, all those people are gone at this point. So she's not on the run. This is a self-imposed exile. I think she feels guilty, and she doesn't know how to rid herself of that guilt. So the best she can do is basically pay penance. She punishes herself by taking away her ability to practice law, by taking away her ability to make any choices in her life. She's stripped herself of everything that makes her the Kim Wexler that we knew and loved. So I guess I think there's a mix of things going on here, but the one that most resonates with me is sort of punishing herself to try and rid herself of that guilt.
Yeah, and we got to jump into some questions now, but we'll come back around to this as it comes up, because I'm realizing it, as we're talking, that I'm still kind of processing the situation. It's complicated, and it's fabulous, and I'm sure we're gonna have a lot of questions as we go through. So definitely revisit it. All right, John Baptist, thank you for the $5. What a sad episode. There is no justification ever for divorce. Kim never should have left Jimmy. I felt sick seeing her live another life. Well, I can't necessarily agree with what you're saying there, but I mean, that is a point of view. It was, I can agree that it was sad to see her living a different life. I would say that, the decision she made and the way that it played out, it all made sense to me. It all seemed true to the character and the story they were telling. So, I don't know that, I wouldn't look at it through this lens. So I can't really, there's not really much more I can say, but except to say that, for me at least, it rang true to what the characters, what was set up for the characters. Roger Rubio, thank you for the $5. Now that we've seen the 2 episodes that followed, do you view the episode Nippy differently now? What is your favorite 3-episode stretch of BCS? Oh, that's a difficult question that I'll try to think about in the back of my mind. For a simpler question, what do I think about Nippy? I mean, I kind of liked Nippy in the first place. I didn't have a bad reaction to it. It wasn't as good as the one before it, and it's not as good as 612, but it made sense, I thought, to give, kind of have a little bit of room to breathe after the intense, talking about 3-episode stretches. 7, 8, and 9 is a contender for that, and it was a pretty intense stretch. So Nippy was a good chance to kind of see a little bit of Jimmy before they took this hard turn into him being Saul again. Did you, Gil, you thought Nippy was fine when it came out, right?
Yeah, I liked Nippy, and I was pretty happy with the placement of Nippy. It was kind of a left turn that I think surprised pretty much all of us, because we had that flash forward to Saul Goodman, and then all of a sudden we cut
Yeah.
to Gene Takovic. But I thought the placement of it worked really well because I think that these stories generally work best when we're feeling at least a piece of what the characters are feeling. And in Nippy, what Gene was feeling is the excitement of rediscovering the Saul Goodman part of himself. And in this stretch of episodes where it was very dark, dire, tragic episodes, very few Slippin' Jimmy, Saul Goodman antics in those episodes. So after that stretch, to get this Nippy episode, we felt some of that relief of getting to just see Saul Goodman having fun again. If we went into the Breaking Bad timeline, saw Saul Goodman antics, and then had Nippy, it would have felt like, oh, this is more of the same. So for me, the placement of the episode actually worked really well. The tone of it, giving us, like you said, a chance to breathe before things get intense again, I think works really well. And I think I will remember Nippy fondly. It's kind of that one last season 1-esque fun episode before we get into the finale of Better Call Saul.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, that's what I was left with after the fact. It might not have been what I wanted in the moment because, like you said, we had that flash forward, so my expectations were elsewhere. But it felt really good to have one more of those season 1 style episodes and just let them do that. And it was there was some fun moments. It ended up being kind of a harbinger of what there was to become, because and that was sort of going through my head the whole time because I'm thinking about them being addicts now and about how he's relapsing and how that doesn't seem like a good thing. Good things are going to come out of that for the future. But it was I agree with everything that you say there. Do you have a 3-episode stretch is kind of hard. I mean, I think 8, 9, and 10 of season 5. Beyond that, it's hard for me to like really pin down 3 episodes in a row to answer this question.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's almost like I really think of all the episodes as part of one big story. I mean, they flow together so seamlessly. The Gene episodes here feel like their own individual unit. So I think when I reflect back on the show, that's the part I'm going to remember if I'm trying to pick out 3 or 4 episodes that go together. But yeah, you mentioned the end of season 5; those kind of flowed together pretty well too, because you remember Bagman leading right into Bad Choice Road. That very intense scene of Lalo walking into their condo for the first time. So that's definitely a contender. But I feel like I need to go back and rewatch the first 3 episodes of this season because I said it already earlier, but Nacho feels like ancient history at this point.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking that episode was incredible.
It was.
The tone of that episode, the visual that I think will be a landmark for the series in my brain for years to come. But Nacho's flower with the storm in the background and the rain. So I think I'll have to answer this question after I've done another full series rewatch. So I'll defer for now.
Yeah, I meant to loop back to that too because you mentioned getting the comment about that being in this season. I saw a couple like that too, and when I was thinking about it, I was like, Lalo's death was just a few episodes ago.
It's a distant memory.
And that even seems like a distant memory now. Like, and that is really how effective it has been, the way that they jump forward in these last episodes. It's like we're in a whole different season.
Yeah, it really feels that way.
All right. Mike T, I missed yours earlier. Sorry about that. Thank you for the 5. If Kim doesn't break up with Jimmy, would he still become the Saul from Breaking Bad? I mean, this is a question that we can't really answer. And, in my opinion, anyways, I think that, it depends on how you play it out. Like I think she was right in her decision to leave because that they would escalate and more bad things would happen. Like even if Howard didn't die or she didn't leave, something bad would eventually happen based on what they were doing. And, that's what she's trying to avoid. That's what she's trying to hide out from, is to not be that person anymore. Does he, Saul is a coping mechanism. So if something bad was always going to happen and they were always going to break up as a result, then I think he always becomes Saul, and I mean, it's just I just don't think it's something that you can really answer in a straightforward way.
Yeah, I think for this what if to occur, either Jimmy or Kim would have to fundamentally be different people. Um, because to your point, I think something like what happened to Howard is inevitable because their schemes would have continued to escalate until something stopped it. And that something is tragedy that causes Kim to walk away. So the only way maybe she wouldn't break up with Saul is if she already had an experience like this in the past that taught her, hey, I shouldn't scam people because it can go horribly wrong. But in that case, she wouldn't have been with Jimmy to begin with. So
Yeah.
it's sort of, you can't really play out the what if because these two characters had to be who they are for them to be together. And then this conclusion is essentially inevitable.
Yeah, and I thought about that a lot with Walter too. You know, people were saying, well, what if he didn't, what if Jimmy didn't go after him, didn't walk into that school? I mean, Walter is a force of nature as far as I'm concerned. So he may have just died. He may have just gotten killed earlier or something, you know what I mean? But I feel like mayhem was still going to come out of that situation one way or the other. You know, there's not really a world where he gets that $737,000 that he thought he needed and then stops. I mean, that's not the nature of it, of what they're doing. And when I think about their scamming and that escalation, like the sort of progression behind it, like they can't go back and scam free drinks and get the same thrill after what they pulled off with Howard if it goes as it was planned, if he doesn't die at the end. They sort of have to raise the ante, or the stakes each time. And yeah, we're pretty much in agreement here that that will lead to disaster in one way or the other. Isaac Drum, thank you for the 20. That is very generous. He's symbolism of Saul being buried in desert in Breaking Bad timeline. The teaser showing Esteem in desert and the teaser of him ripping down wanted poster leads me to believe he is headed to Albuquerque for his date with Destiny. Yeah, that has been my thought, was that he would turn himself in. Seeing Kim go back to Albuquerque, I'm not really sure if that changes anything. It was interesting that she went there because it felt like it was a kind of a goodbye to the place, but it could just be her goodbye to the place. There might be more to see there. The teaser of the Esteem, that seems like it's a ghost of the memory, like the ghost of what happened before. I'm not sure if there is a literal purpose to showing that, or if it's just to kind of evoke those feelings of who this was, the journey that he went on, with that car. It was so important in the early part, and it ended up out there decaying in the desert. What do you think, Gil?
Yeah, I think they've definitely been playing with a lot of finale tropes and callbacks. It's almost like each episode in the final stretch here have had callbacks to where this all started. Hey, there's a new trash can in the HHM lobby, or Showtime, folks. Or last episode, Gene doing the trying to get the phone to ring, with his mind, or conjure some voicemails on his answering machine. And definitely what you expect from a finale is, let's go back to where it all started. So it feels appropriate that Jimmy would head back to Albuquerque. And definitely Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul both like to play with the kind of hands of fate. Howard and Lalo walking into his apartment at the same time. So with Kim in Albuquerque and this show feeling like a tragic love story, it just feels like we need Jimmy and Kim to see each other one more time. She's in Albuquerque now. If we're going to go back to where it all started, Jimmy heads back to Albuquerque, maybe even bumps into Kim because they both go to the same place at the same time. I'd say it feels right to me. It feels appropriate, but this show definitely likes to surprise us. So got to wait and see.
Yeah, that's interesting. When I watched the episode, my initial take was that her story was complete. Like,
Mhm.
not that she wouldn't come back necessarily, but kind of from her perspective, it was, and then the bigger thing was that this is now about Jimmy's desperation to get back together or at least see her again.
Right.
That they made it that pretty clear in the way that they paralleled each other, and they showed how, what she was doing was different than what he was doing. And at the bottom of it all, we know he's motivated by that pain, and he really went off the rails after that call and the way that played out. And I think there's a question of what that feeling does to him and how he'll react now that he's on the run, because the scam is over.
Mhm.
He can't just go back and do pull some scams with Jeff to kind of kill the pain, to kind of medicate or whatever you want to call what he's doing. So I took her being in the shuttle at the end where she breaks down and cries. I took that as her going back to Florida.
Mhm.
Um, but I mean, I do, I do think that there's potential to see them interact there once again. Like, I don't know. It seems more likely than him going to Florida, I think.
Mhm.
I mean, he does know where she's at. He
Right.
could go, but he's on the run. So he sort of almost has to go back to where his story would end, rather than picking up new destinations as a wanted man. That makes sense, right?
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. It kind of feels like the walls have closed in at this point, and if he realizes he can only run for a little bit longer, he only gets to go one more place. Where would he choose to go? And regarding Kim, I mean, one of the brilliant things the show is doing right now is it's getting to a few points where you could end, and it could be an appropriate ending. And I would say you could end the Kim story right now. It just depends on what Peter Gould and the rest of the writers want to say about the Kim character and what they want to say in the subtext and the meaning of the show. Do they want to say that she is doomed? She is doomed to carry this guilt and live in her self-imposed exile, and there is no way to get past it, at least for her, because that is what I would take away if we didn't see her again. And that's totally appropriate, and I wouldn't argue with it. But I think it's just up to them, and how do they want to wrap it up? I would not find it unsatisfying at this point if we didn't see her again, but I might be disappointed.
Yeah. I'm going to come back to that in a second,
Yeah,
because there's something else that I wanted to pull on there, but I want to knock out a couple of these
sure.
questions. Big Ralph, thank you for the 5. Well, we have seen Walt and Jesse together and Jesse alone. We are due for a Walt solo. Any ideas? I'm thinking another flashback, obviously, into the Breaking Bad timeline, but I don't really have a great idea of, you know, where that could be. There was a lot of talk about it being around the time of the ricin cigarette, and that was sort of the darkest depths of what Saul Goodman was involved with. We kind of get this question every week, and I kind of think that I'm gonna figure it out by the next time we come on, and there's just so many options. Like I would have never guessed that Kim running into Jesse outside was how he was going to show up
Mhm.
solo, and in a way you couldn't have, because I mean, I know there was a photo of it out there and a lot of people knew it and based their theories off that throughout the season or whatever, but you know the writers even said that this was one that was pretty much, they just did it because they wanted to do it, not because there was a good reason for it. The Walter thing could be the same, or it could be a really essential thing. But I guess it always comes back to it always comes back down to me of it being about who Saul is, what Saul's thinking about, and especially now what he's going to be thinking about while he's running for his life and just trying to make a decision if he wants to change his path, if he wants to try to make up for something, or if he wants to go down in a blaze of glory.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the Jesse Kim conversation is a nice poetry to that, in the sense that we're seeing her as she is kind of leaving the grinder of the game. It destroyed her life, and she's meeting Jesse right before he goes into the game. So those two characters are similar in that way, and that they both passed through not unscathed, but they got through the other side of it, intent on not making the same mistakes again. So if I think about Walt, I mean, the parallel to him is Saul. So I guess I'd say my prediction is that the interaction will be between Walt and Saul. It's not going to be, with Kim or another side character. And the one place I can think of is when they were both in the disappearer's basement. I know we already saw them interact, but I can't recall if we saw the entirety of their time together. I wonder if there was a lull there where maybe they had a conversation where, viewed in this context, it could kind of feel like the two of them talking and having a meaningful conversation where the subtext is almost both of them reflecting on their journeys and reflecting on the choices they're about to make, which is in Walt's case, kind of going out in a blaze of glory. And it seems like Gene may be similar. So I guess my vague prediction is that it's Saul and Walt, and it will be a conversation that somehow works as the two of them reflecting on their journeys in a meaningful way as we go into the finish line.
Yeah, that's something that I had thought about in the past would be a good place to maybe fill in some blanks, because they were there for at least 24 hours together in that basement, and we only saw a brief conversation. And it's one of those times where you actually could say that you see Jimmy instead of Saul. You know what I mean? Like the advice that he's giving him about turning himself in and all of that sounds a lot more like the Jimmy character than the Saul character, even though, the Jimmy character didn't really exist whenever they wrote that. One thing about that is that we'll have to live with bald cap discourse again if they do that.
Yeah, no ski cap this time.
Yeah, because there's no beanie assistant in that basement at all. Like, that doesn't even make sense. As one of the things, like, after it still blows my mind. Anytime anyone mentions El Camino in anything, it's one of the first things you see is about how people were just so distraught about him wearing a bald cap.
Yeah, that's something I recently admitted, that, to be completely honest, when I look at it, I just don't see the bald cap. But I know it's one of those subjective things. When you have a deep fake character, for example, in some of the Star Wars properties, some people say, hey, it looks fine to me. And then for me, it's super off-putting. This is similar. I look at the bald cap, I look at a side-by-side picture, and I'm like, I don't know. It looks fine to me. So I'm not worried about it, at least.
Yeah, that's true, because, it's not something that ever really, I guess I noticed it, but it never distracted me from what the actor was doing,
right.
What the story was doing, what the character was showing. So, I guess that's true. So for other people, it may be super, super obvious and distracting. There's other things, if I really think about it, that probably, stand out to me that might not to other people. But it's just one of those things. Every time I see anyone bring up El Camino, it's like, oh, well, now we got to read a bunch of comments about the bald cap, and instead of like what the person's actually talking about. Do you have a pronunciation of this name? I see it every week, and I appreciate the super chats, but I have a real hard time.
Dang. One of my favorite parts of doing this is seeing you attempt to pronounce some of these names. So I kind of don't want to jump in.
Yeah, slant math.
That's kind of what I would have said, I think.
Yeah, I'm really sorry. I mean, I don't. It's not. I'm not making light of the name that you have here. I really it confuses my brain when I try to say the words. Thank you for the $6.99 Canadian. Do you think Gene would have carried out his threat on Marion if she hadn't reminded him of Miss Landry? or was he bluffing the whole time? I'm not sure. I think this is a case of he didn't know what he was. This is a heat of the moment situation. There's a possibility that he might have been scared about what he was doing, but at the same time, whenever you're in a situation like that, he should be thinking about that as a matter of survival. Like, I have to neutralize this threat. And then there's a moment where he can actually use his rational brain, and he can understand what's going on. I do like, if it's not about Mrs. Landry, then I like the symmetry of that. I kind of brought that up in my last video. And I was kind of thinking about I said it's sort of like revenge or justice for Irene. And I had a lot of people who were saying, but he did the right thing at the end of that. And I understand that. I was kind of thinking more about the pattern of him being really comfortable with talking to elderly ladies, and having a way with being able to kind of get them to do what he wants, and how that is something, it's a blind spot for him in this situation. At least that's how I was looking at it going in. And so there is a symmetry there to, like, yeah, he did one of the most awful things that we remember him doing in relation to Irene, and he did actually feel bad about it, because Jimmy doesn't always feel bad or fix things. So I do like that. I don't know if he would have I can't say that he wouldn't have come to his senses without that. I mean, I don't really think he's a murderer, like the kind of person that does that in cold blood anyway. But I don't think that he was necessarily bluffing either. I think it's a fight or flight kind of survival instinct. And you know she really was threatening his existence, exposing his identity.
Yeah, I think it's an ambiguous moment, right? There's not enough text in the show to tell us for sure what was in his mind. I kind of have to tell myself that he was bluffing, or maybe didn't quite know what he was doing, but would never have actually crossed the line. Because if in his brain he was seriously considering strangling her and killing her, to me, even if he didn't go through with it, that's kind of irredeemable. To even have that in your list of actual realistic options, to me, that's you've crossed the line at that point. So I guess it's ambiguous, but I'd like to believe he would never have gone through with it. And I think we have to watch the final episode here and see what is the final statement on Jimmy McGill. How much of his soul does he have left? And we'll see.
Yeah, it's ambiguous is the correct way to look at it. And like I was saying that a little bit earlier, there's so much that you can't know. His next move and every move that he makes after that will dictate the end of the story. It's a what do they say on the television news? This is a developing situation. I
Right.
mean, that's where we're at right now. We're watching someone's life, everything, the way that he's remembered, and the way that his legacy will all be tied exactly to the next couple of decisions that he makes in succession in the next hour of TV. Johan, thank you for the $5. Cops are coming quickly. Marion knows him as Gene Takovic. Does Gene even have time to go back to his combo for cash diamonds? It is an interesting question. I think I don't think she knows where he lives. Um, I don't know if they've ever referenced that her or Jeff. You kind of think that he would keep that to himself. He's not. He's not. He's pretty smart. He's careful. But yeah, he doesn't have long before the police figure out where that's at.
Yeah, I think Jeff drove him to his house after the. Oh, or no, actually, he
No,
had
he
to drop
stopped
him
him.
off. You're
Yeah.
right. You're right. Yeah, good point. Good point. So yeah, I think he could make it back possibly, but he would have to move very quickly. Whatever happens next, I think we're seeing a desperate person with very few choices remaining. So, like we alluded to earlier, with where is he going to go, it'll be very interesting to see what choice he makes.
Yeah, and you saw the little teaser that they showed after the mid credits thing, right?
I didn't see it. Are you talking? I've
Oh,
seen mention of the Esteem ripping down the
Yeah.
wanted poster. Is that what we're talking about, or something else?
Yeah, it's the one in poster one is a teaser that was out at the beginning of the season,
Okay.
and Tom Schnell said that actually that some of that was just manufactured by the
Right.
marketing department. Like that wasn't necessarily something that we could look at as a scene that's going to come up.
Not canonical.
Yeah, but yeah, at the end of the last episode in the mid credits kind of thing that they've been doing, they show the esteem, and you hear Jimmy saying the words for Ed to disappear,
Okay.
but it's not, there's no context of this is him saying this right now, or he said it before, or he's thinking about it. It's all very vague. And um I was just thinking about that because I saw a lot of comments about how wouldn't it be crazy if his instinct is to go back and get the diamonds and try to run again,
Mhm.
and he calls the vacuum cleaner shop and finds out that Ed passed away and that there's no
Mm.
one that actually took his place. Like he calls and it's just the vacuum cleaner store now. They're like, okay,
Yeah.
Hoover, Pressure Pro, like we don't know what you're talking about. We don't carry that, and that would be pretty insane. you
I
know?
saw a theory a few days ago, I think, that maybe Kim it has become the new disappearer. I mean, of course, that's been disproven now, but I was like,
Yeah,
yeah, okay, so maybe you call up and say, I need a sprinkler system 5,000, and that's now the code. So clearly that hasn't proven true. But if he calls Ed again, I feel like it's maybe a little bit of a cop out for Ed to no longer be there. Obviously, we can't see him or hear him. I understand that, but it feels like maybe it would be a cop out to just say that option is no longer there for Jimmy. I feel like at this point, the most interesting thing is to see what choices he's going to make. So maybe more
yeah,
interesting than that would be the disappearer is available, but he finally chooses to face the music.
yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, at the same time, we are currently watching all of his options disappear, right? The cops are after him. So what's one more escape route going away? So I could see it going that way as well.
Yeah, but I like the idea that you have there. I think that it would make it matter more if he chooses that
Mhm.
rather than he doesn't have a choice because his first option didn't work. He couldn't disappear. So okay, now I'll turn myself in. That kind of puts an asterisk on the end of the series and what
Right.
what's saying, I guess, right? Jonathan Gamble Putty, thank you for the 199. Time to sing. And I was just thinking when I was looking at this, like this is such a dense episode, and you can almost forget about this, but like if you watch Ray Seahorn on that call, and how she musters up the courage to just hang up the phone, you know what I mean? And then for them to have this it's time to sing, like to go out and sing happy birthday to this other character who happens to share a birthday with Jimmy, because obviously she's talking to Jimmy on his birthday and it never gets brought up, but she gets whisked away into the other room to sing. And man, it's like I said, there's so many of these little moments that you can kind of forget about it, but it was incredible. It was just a great shot. I'm glad you brought this up here, Johan.
Yeah. Powerhouse episode for Ray Seahorn.
Aaron, thank you for the 20. That's very generous. What do you think is Gene's primary motivation force behind all the chaos in the last couple episodes? Hard to connect the dots that led him to such hostile behavior last episode with the cancer guy and Marion. My take on it is this is the way that he copes with the pain of what's happened, and I think they did a pretty good job of emphasizing that this week whenever they had them together in this his office there. He can't face the reality of what's happening, so he turns to something else, and it's like an addiction. He's medicating himself, and it's the kind of situation, I think, where it has to escalate. The phone call and the way that it went down was so traumatic to him that he's just off the rails. Like he just has to distract his mind from what's actually, a very painful thing to look at.
Yeah, and I think that's 100% right. And I hate to just go to the author intent because it feels like cheating, but I think I had this interpretation upon viewing it because it parallels so strongly with the creation of Saul Goodman. Kim rejects him. That is kind of the final shred of hope he has for acceptance. When she rejects him, it cuts to now he's Saul Goodman. So it's so clearly established as his coping mechanism. We've seen flashes of it before, but now with this biggest gut punch, he's so firmly entrenched in this character he's created. So I definitely had it in mind as a coping mechanism. So when we saw that call, I read it as rejection by Kim, and now he has to cope exactly like you said. He needs to go on another scam bender, and more desperately than ever before, because maybe he was holding on to some faint hope that he could reunite with Kim at some point. I mean, you hear it in his voice. The fact that he can call her and say, "Hey, just wanted to check in." He seems oblivious to the fact that there's no chance of a genuine reconnection between Jimmy McGill and Kim Wexler. So with this final rejection, he just goes off the rails. He needs to keep scamming. And when they get to a bump in the road where maybe they should skip this one guy, he can't push the brakes. I think that's why we saw him in the RV with Jesse and Walt. When they turn the lights off and Jesse asks about Lalo, that drudges up all of that PTSD and trauma. For a moment, he's Jimmy McGill again, scared of Lalo Salamanca. So at that point, he says to Walt, "You got to try it again. I need to get back to the office and get back to being Saul Goodman." So I think with Cancer Guy, it's another example of he cannot push the brakes. He needs to keep going. And the reason I mentioned author intent earlier is because Tom Schnauz has talked about this, where basically he'll say that the rejection from Kim on the phone opened up the wound. And as we've seen, the way he deals with it is by being Saul Goodman. Now, I do think there's an ambiguous moment where when he's in the guy's house, he's taking the pictures, he can leave. But instead, he decides to go make himself a drink and hang out a bit. So why did he do that? And for me, there's a little Jimmy McGill voice deep inside of his brain that sees the path he's going down, that sees he's on a path of self-destruction. This is similar to the voice inside Kim's head that tells her to finally go and confess. I think that voice maybe wants him to get caught, some small part of him. So he's pushing the boundaries a little bit. I'll say that part of it I'm still kind of processing, but currently that's how I'm viewing all this.
Yeah, I kind of went back and forth on that of like why he does that there. I mean, I think there's the high of it, like he's getting away with it. Like, of course, Jeff showed up on time, just like I said he would. I can walk around this house. I can, it doesn't matter. I'm invincible kind of thing.
Right.
And then like you're saying, he's also being completely like reckless compared to what we're used to. So maybe there is some underlying thing about him wanting to get caught. I mean, I know I've seen that thrown around a lot. It's not something that naturally, came to me in the moment. But when I look, when you try to make sense of something that doesn't really make sense, like that's kind of irrational, you have to at least think about, that you have to at least bring that into the equation, I think.
Right.
And you're talking about, just to get back to this question a little bit before we move on, you're talking about the authorial intent, and yeah, they have pretty much has said that, and I think in my videos leading up to that, I was coming to that conclusion. I had been thinking about that, and in my mind, it was a lot more tragic. The only reason I'm bringing this up again is just because it felt a lot more sad and tragic, like especially after 609 and stuff like that. And then when you see it in, just black and white, like this is why we did that, it sort of takes on a different, it takes on a different tone, and it makes you wonder like exactly how that manifests itself in the finale going forward. Double Dash thank you for the $2. Kim, time equals wasted time. So boring. 80s style. WTF. 80s style. I'm not really sure about that part. Definitely, I definitely like the Walter Sobchak icon you got there, but can't agree with the Kim time equals wasted time. Um,
Yeah, Dash and I went back and forth a bit last night. He was
oh,
not a
really?
fan of the episode. Yeah, but we're kind of buddies now because we agreed to disagree. One of those rare things that happens on the internet.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just don't relate to these comments at all. I like I said at the start of this, I was on the edge of my seat watching Kim, just
Yeah.
fascinated by her character, and Jimmy. So
Yeah.
I love the episode. Did not feel like the time was wasted.
Do you understand what he's talking about with the 80s style thing? Is
I
that
don't
from
know.
yesterday too?
No, that's new to me. I don't know if that's referring to fashion choices. I'm not a fashion person. I have no idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really have I just don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. But thank you for the 2 there, Dash Dash. Mr. G, they made a point of showing that Kim won't make any decisions. She is purposely denying herself agency in her own life for fear that she will hurt someone. Yeah, I wouldn't disagree with that. I mean, it's not where I landed right from the beginning, but looking back now, I do think that that's the case. And and when we're talking about Jimmy, this brings up this question here too. Is Jimmy trying to get caught? Is that a conscious decision? Is that something that's going on? And then, her not making decisions here, is that a conscious decision, or is that just a part of, living this life and not trying to make waves?
Right. Yeah, I know you and I have kind of already talked about the couple of possible interpretations for why she's doing all this, and I definitely think it's a mix of fear. She's seen what happens when she kind of embraces herself and makes choices, and also a mix of punishment, self-exile, not allowing herself to be herself because she carries so much guilt.
Yeah, and I think on the Insider podcast, I was listening to that a little bit when I was falling asleep last night. And I think they were kind of bringing up this idea, or Vince Gilligan was bringing up the idea of penance.
Right.
That she was trying to do that. And I wish I was listening a little bit closer, because I don't know if he got to what the motive. Like, I understand penance. I just wonder if he was saying that in relation to. Is she trying to achieve, like, is she trying to atone? Is that what they're saying whenever she eventually goes back to see Cheryl? You know what I mean? Like, I didn't really get the full idea about what he was saying. Bear Down Adam, thank you for the $4.99. The divorce scene where Jimmy is in full Saul mode was gut wrenching. I totally agree. We're talking about our experience of the episode. I was really mystified by what was happening in Florida. And obviously the end is super intense and crazy, and I was on the edge of my seat for that. But yeah, the first thing that really kind of stuck, the thing that was kind of hanging around in the back of my mind that I just couldn't really shake, was that interaction in his office. That's in my video. That's the first part I talked about, because it's affecting in a way that it doesn't really make sense. I mean, obviously, if you think about those 2 characters, you think of everything that happened with them to get them to that point. It's just, you don't even really know which one to side with. I guess it's sort of like, whenever you think about being like a kid who's in a who's being raised by parents that can't get along, and they have to separate or whatever, and the kid is pulled both ways, even if both parents are at fault or whatever. There's still that idea that these people matter to me, and I don't want to see this happen. And that's kind of how I felt with watching that scene.
Yeah, I mean, it really crystallizes the idea that Jimmy shields himself from pain with the Saul Goodman persona, because he can't have a genuine conversation with her, because it's only, I mean, what would that lead to, right? He can't be with her, so he puts on that Saul Goodman front. And one thing that occurred to me watching the episode that I think is such a great choice they're making in this final stretch here is, I kept wondering what more is there to be said about the Saul Goodman character. Once you know that it's a coping mechanism, it's a front, we don't really need to see any more of it because we saw him in Breaking Bad already. But I think what they've been doing is just they're showing us the Saul Goodman character and what it means to different people. We see what it means to Gene and how he kind of, and I know that they're the same person, but how he reflects back on that period of
Are
time.
they?
Right. Like, I got news for you. But how does he reflect back on those times, and how does he view Saul Goodman? And he views himself as paramount in creating what Walter White became. I think that's what is part of what we saw last episode. And then in this episode, we see Saul Goodman from Kim's perspective. And I don't know, at least I find that it's an interesting approach, and it makes me wonder, is there one final morsel? And I guess I think there is one final morsel, probably a scene with Walt in the final episode.
Yeah, and there's so much here. I'm just gonna pull up this 8HNIC 8199. There's so much that man, I'm still just sort of tossing around. Ray's bus scene equals greatest acting ever. Breaking Bad or BCS. I mean, that's a pretty strong statement, but I mean, recency bias aside, I think it has to be in the contention. It has to be in contention for that. I mean, it was a wonderful scene, and I really liked the idea. I really liked the choice to have the person sitting next to her put her hand on her, on her arm at the end to sort of offer some comfort. And I did listen to that. I do remember listening to that part of the Insider podcast when they were talking about how they shot this in one. It's a oneer. They changed the camera angle, but it's just two different. It's one take with two different camera angles of the same shot. And I think like the to be able to that whole range of the progression of breaking down and just how real that felt. But then with it, when you have the hand come in at the end, the stranger's hand, it's just like, inside Kim Wexler's brain right there, the character, this made up character on the TV show, that we watched everything that was going on in Florida, and her thinking that that's what she deserved, so that here she doesn't believe that she deserves that comfort. And so like that little touch in the scene really adds so much dimension, and none of that works if it's not for the way that Ray Seahorn was able to deliver that. I mean, it's just amazing performance.
Yeah, not a lot for me to add, because it would just be me saying, yeah, incredible performance. I love the choice to just sit there and watch the entire progression. Incredible. I love the moment of the stranger. It's an odd comparison, but it reminds me of Spider-Man 2 with all the strangers on the subway helping Spider-Man back on. I'm such a sucker for just seeing strangers show kindness, especially in this last stretch of episodes where there's so much darkness. Just to see a genuinely kind moment. You see somebody in pain, and as a human being, your instinct is to give a helping hand. So amazing scene. Yeah.
It's one of those things, whenever we think about things, there's so much stuff that gets in the way. But whenever we just react as human beings to seeing something that looks like that, we're a lot different in the way that we approach other people and humanity in general. So yeah, I agree with you on that. Like the stranger, it might be a trope, like the kind stranger, but people actually sometimes are more charitable as strangers than they are whenever they know exactly what's going on, and they make calculated decisions or whatever.
Yeah. Well said.
Brian Worthington, thank you for the $10. Pete, do you think Jimmy and Kim will see each other again in the final episode? Well, I sort of started talking about this earlier and got sidetracked, but my initial thought was that her story was over, but there was still more as far as their story together, and make of that what you will. I think I don't know if they were gonna. I don't know if they're gonna see each other. I don't know if we'll see them in the same physical space. But I mean, it's Ray Seahorn. We're just talking about how, when you have her on your team, if you can figure out a way to get her into the game in the final innings, you know what I mean? Like you need to try to do that. They didn't put her on the Insider podcast with the farewell. As far as I understand, the Talking Saul thing wasn't a farewell to the character. So I think it's absolutely for sure that she'll be in the last episode, but I don't know if that'll be, her doing things that affect what Jimmy will ultimately do, or if they will actually see each other again. What do you think, Gil?
Uh, I always say that whatever choice they make on the show, even if to me it sounds like the wrong choice, I'm sure they'll find a way to do it where I say that makes total sense. But I'll say that right now, it's really hard for me to imagine a satisfying conclusion, or at least for me personally, it's hard to imagine that I will feel satisfied if I don't see these two characters together and interacting one more time. And I think one thing I'm hoping to see is Jimmy reconcile with his past and have we've seen him pull his emotions out that may have some basis in reality, but they're always used as a tool, like we most recently saw with Frank, where he has his breakdown, but just to buy time for Jeff to get back up and get moving. I don't feel we've ever seen a really genuine kind of confession sort of a moment from Jimmy. And I think we have to see that in the finale, or at least I'm hoping to see it. And I don't know who else it could be with besides Kim. Who else is left in his life that he could have such an intimate conversation with? So I guess my gut tells me we need to see them together one more time. But I always give the caveat that anytime I've thought the show was going to go right and it goes left, I end up saying, in retrospect, that makes total sense. And I have such an implicit trust in these writers.
Yeah, it would be a baller move if they didn't actually if they didn't bring them back together. I agree with you, and it sort of goes back to what I was saying earlier. These characters do what they that makes sense for them to do, but then there's this whole thing of like I want them to do things too.
Right.
You know what I mean? And in my mind, certain things are much more satisfying than others, and it does. It seems like it would be really unsatisfying for them not to come back together. But like I said, I think she was going back to Florida. I mean, that she's on the she we may find out that after her cry that she decided not to go back to Florida. That's a possibility. But it wasn't that I didn't feel like, tonally that's what that was saying. I felt like she did the best she could as far as being responsible for what happened, and it wasn't perfect, and she couldn't even really deliver closure. There's a possibility that in the short term she even kind of opened up some wounds again, and couldn't really make that right, because it didn't sound like they'll actually prosecute her either without, some kind of witness coming up or something, you know what I mean?
Right.
So it's, yeah, but I mean, I don't know, but I can't wait to see
Yeah.
what
Hey, we could
they do
get,
with it.
hey, they're not afraid to use tropes like we've seen with The Kind Stranger. We could get the romantic comedy, Jean chasing after the airplane as she prepares to take off for Florida. The cops are chasing after him. It could happen.
Yeah, I was thinking, I was reading Alan Sepinwall's review this morning, and he brought up something that I hadn't thought about. I'm trying to find how to summarize it pretty short, but he was basically saying that Jimmy wants to see her again so bad. Would he actually bring her into what's going on with him getting caught just so he can see her one more time? Does that make sense? I mean, it's a bit of a paragraph there. He says, "Will she see him again? I would not bet against Kim being in the finale, not after how crucial she's become to the series." While talking to Cheryl, Kim acknowledges that Jimmy Saul Jean is the one who can corroborate her story. These last two episodes have established that he is desperate to see her again. and that he responds to her understandable refusal to do so in the worst possible ways. And this installment concludes with Jeff's mother, Marion, ratting Gene out to the authorities in a manner that could well bring him back to the scene of his many crimes. Under those circumstances, would he be willing to put Kim in legal jeopardy just as an excuse to see her again?
Yeah.
That would be a pretty insane twist, I think. If he's just like, I'm going to jail anyway. I just wanted to see you one more time.
Right. Would it put her in I guess I can imagine ways to approach that without putting her in legal jeopardy. Kind of like we saw with Walt when he called Skylar and was like, what did you have to do with this? Nothing. Right. There's a way to interact with her that doesn't put her in legal jeopardy. Where the from an outsider perspective, it would appear that he is an antagonist. Maybe she's there unwillingly, even though on the inside they're having a conversation for the last time, and then he gets taken away. I guess I don't necessarily take it that him seeing her means she's in legal jeopardy.
Yeah, I think what he's saying though is that would he go that far?
You're saying would he choose to put her in legal jeopardy as a way?
Yeah, would he choose to do that in order just so that he can see her one last time before he goes down for his crimes?
I see what you're saying. Okay. Yeah, okay, that's an interesting idea. That would be I guess I wouldn't be too happy with him if he did that.
No. No one who's watching it would be. I mean, I guess there would be some sadists who would think like, yeah, that's good. She deserves it or something. But it would be, it'd be one of those things that it would be very hard to square inside your head. But it would also kind of make sense for what we saw in the last few episodes. He's willing to go to crazy lengths to kind of not feel that. What is he willing to go to actually just see her one more time? Because it's pretty obvious that at least where they left things on the last phone call, she doesn't want that to happen. She's not open to that happening. 8HNIC8, thank you for the 199 again. This is the best BCS episode equals me after the last 6 episodes. I think for me the high points were 7, 9, and 12. I don't think that the other ones that followed I never really put them higher on the list. But yeah, but I think what's more important than like any individual episode being, the best or whatever, is just that it's all felt like a meaningful progression towards something that's going to be satisfying at the end,
Yeah, no, I second all of that.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, I'm never great at ranking. I don't really like doing it because I get so caught up in whatever I'm doing at the moment that I'm really bad with recency kind of stuff. Like because that's the way I like to enjoy things, is to like kind of be like as absorbed in it at the moment as I can be. Craig Otto, thank you for the $10. Please reflect on the fact that Howard's death is having an impact on the end of this story. Glad there'll be record of it, even if it's not prosecuted. Have you rewatched his final scene since? Yeah, I've watched it a lot of times, both in making clips and just sort of. Before the second half of the season started, I rewatched the whole first half just to kind of, get back into that headspace. And yeah, I mean, I don't think it's terribly important as far as beyond what it's doing to the characters, and it has been doing a thing. It's sort of like, when you think of their lives, there's like sort of before Howard, after Howard, and that's what we're seeing. And, we're all of what we're talking about like, why is Kim doing this? Why is Kim living this way? That's all exactly about Howard's death.
Yeah. I mean, I've been, since his death, thinking about the end of this series. This is on that list of things that I felt was necessary for a satisfying conclusion. If there's any hope of, redemption for either of these characters, or any hope of us leaving the series without looking at both of them as just they succumb to evil, and I'm not happy with either of these characters. A confession had to happen. The record had to be set straight. And specifically, I think it had to be set straight for Cheryl, plus the public, but I think her first and foremost, give her closure as much as possible. So, I'm very glad to see that it's still having an impact, not just in the sense that it brought these characters here, but as Craig pointed out, it's explicitly having an impact and explicitly being addressed. I think that was very important, and I'm glad that we're seeing it.
What a little mini arc for Cheryl Hamlin, huh? I mean, three scenes and totally right there with her at the end whenever Kim's there,
Yeah, with her and also for Howard. I mean, we've of course seen a lot more of him, but it's interesting how for Howard and for Cheryl, they've shown us little snippets of these characters' lives, just kind of little check-ins. With Howard, we saw this whole arc that just played off screen, where he has insomnia, he's completely falling apart, and then he basically did what Jimmy should have done. He went and he got help and he dealt with his emotions. He got that Namaste license plate. We saw him do a total 180. And we saw similarly with Cheryl, it's just a couple of snippets, but you feel like you're absorbing this kind of off-screen arc for that character. It's the way that Better Call Saul and Breaking Bad are so good at making even characters that don't appear on screen very much, making them feel very real. Their lives don't go on pause just because we're not seeing them.
Mm-hmm. DSKC Gaming, thank you for the $2. No oath line yet. Kim goes DA to put an end to it. I feel like any idea about her becoming a lawyer again, I wasn't a big fan. I mean, I understand that there was that teaser. I wasn't really a big fan of this idea in my head. I think after this, I mean, do you think that there is a turn like that? Is there room for a turn like that? Would a turn like that make sense? Would you like to see Kim, the color, come back into Kim's life and her make a big shift? I mean, her helping Jimmy seems really, really kind of contrived in a way at this point.
Yeah, no, I'll definitely agree with that. That her helping Jimmy would feel. I mean, she kind of helped him, right, by leaving it ambiguous of if he's, I think he's still out there or he might still be alive. But her taking an active role in helping him in the finale, that feels like a bridge too far. Her becoming a lawyer again feels unlikely. But I guess if you were to imagine a happy ending, it would be her figuring out a way to move on and kind of realize that she can be a lawyer and make choices and pick the mayonnaise that she wants without getting someone killed. That would be the happy ending. And if this were real life, it wouldn't seem impossible. But I don't know. At this point, they've trained me not to expect happy endings. So who knows?
Yeah. Like I said, I just don't. It's a good. The first time I watched it, I didn't really pick up on the idea that she does sort of shield him there when she says if he's still alive. And there is a bit of that, but yeah, I agree with what you're saying there. For her to take the active role, that would seem out of character, I think. And I don't know I don't know how that would benefit his ending, because we want him to be able to break through this coping mechanism and finally face this stuff that's been, eating him up. And we were talking about the torturous existence before. Her being able to fix that, it just doesn't seem like something I want to see. Francisco Chung, thank you for the 5,900. I believe that's Korean currency. Imagine if Jesse decided not to stick with Saul, or if Saul had listened to Mike's advice. Downfall of Saul, Walter, and Jesse could have been avoided. Yeah, I mean, I agree. In a way, you can make the same argument about, what if Saul didn't go into the high school? What if Kim told Jesse to walk away, and that Saul was not a good lawyer, and you don't want his representation? it all comes back to what we were saying earlier, though, when we were talking about this, and that, a lot of these things, these characters, they're going to get to places one way or the other, sure, anything could change along the way, but, as a thought experiment, okay, you could think this, but the story isn't that if that hadn't happened, then these then the world would have been a better place or something. It's just the way that all these things interact with each other,
Right.
from my perspective.
Yeah, and it's such a compliment to this show, though, that you can play those kind of mental
Yeah,
experiments where you can
I agree.
trace everything back to a series of choices and events. Even other shows that I love, like take a show like Mad Men, it's hard for me to point at specific choices Don Draper made. He made so many kind of different, consistent but unrelated choices where I can't point to one and say, oh, what if he had gone left instead of right? And I'm sure there are instances of that in the show, but I feel like with Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, it's so clear and it's so focused on such a small, limited set of characters that you can really explicitly see all the domino pieces.
Yeah, and actions have consequences. That's a true thing, but I think it's more on the, you look at that on the individual and how those consequences affect them, and then inform further decisions that they make down the road. Binky Boy 10, thank you for the €4.99. Do you think there is a chance or a change that this show will end with Saul in prison? And do you think it's possible that Bill Oakley will defend him in court? I mean, they did show that Bill became a defense attorney, so that would be a little more palatable than Kim, I guess, at this point. But yeah, I mean, I think it could end with Saul in prison. He's definitely wanted. Marion did, call him in. He's on the run. He either has to escape, die, or end up in prison. And, it's going to be one of those three. It's inevitable. What do you think about that and Bill being his
defense
attorney? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, it feels like Saul in prison is kind of the happiest possible ending for the series, which is weird to say. I'd love to see Bill show up and defend him, but I don't know. It feels like there's not a lot of real estate left. Can we, in one episode, get to Gene's on the run? He gets caught. He gets to court. Bill's defending him. It just feels like a lot. Feels like a stretch. But would I love to see it? Sure.
Yeah. And I just realized I saw this 1-2 on the last one that we were doing, but I didn't see the 2 when I initially scrolled down. So, okay, let's read this whole thing out. Imagine if Jesse decided not to stick with Saul, or if Saul had listened to Mike's advice. Downfall of Saul, Walter, and Jesse could have been avoided. And then the second one, when I go down here past Binky Boy 10, is maybe in the final episode, we'll find out how Walter's decision could have made a difference. Love your show. Thank you. You want to, I just scrolled all the way through here. Do you want to address that, Gil?
Yeah, well, I think it
I recalibrate myself here.
Yeah, it goes along with what we were saying before. I mean, there are so many domino pieces you can point to and say, what would have happened if this one didn't fall? Though in this case, I would say that there is a lot of inevitability with some of these characters that I think, let's say that Walt didn't go with Saul or Jesse didn't go with Saul. Walt, I think you called him kind of an unstoppable force of nature earlier. I think that he was powering through and would have found a way. I think it's important that Saul views himself as a decision maker in that process, that he was the one that went and pulled Walt out of the minor leagues. I think Saul views himself that way.
That last time, I agree with that too. Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't think that means that without Saul's intervention, it wouldn't have happened anyway, some other way. Yeah, and I think I guess it's possible that this is what the Walt appearance will be next episode, some kind of rumination on how things could have gone otherwise. But that feels like it's more about Walt than it does about Saul. So I'm not sure that's what we're going to see in Better. I'm not sure that's what we're going to see in the finale, but we'll see.
Yeah, I've been kind of flip-flopping since I've been reading this, and I think you put it pretty well right there. It does seem a little bit more about Walt, you know. But we'll see. Thank you again, Francis Chung, for the question. Jack Withane. Thank you for the 199. Did Saul have Mike find Kim's whereabouts in Florida? No, I don't think so, because in the when they're in the office, he says, "So, Florida," and he won't even let her get it out about why there, and then he doesn't even let her answer the question. It doesn't matter. But he knew about it before she went there. I mean, I think that was the implication. The timeline's a little fuzzy there, because he on the phone he says it's been 6 years. It's been 6 years since they broke up. But then she comes back to do the papers sometime in between. The only thing I could say for sure is it's after he remodeled his office, and before he starts working with Walter White, because obviously Jesse's there with
Emilio,
and that's before season 1, and a fair amount of time before it could be, or it could be right before that. You know what I mean? So it's hard to say. So I think, no, I don't think he used Mike. I think that they had some contact with each other. Maybe just when she said, "Hey, look, I'm moving to Florida. We need to get, divorced, or I'm back. I've been living in Florida, and I just need to get this divorce taken care of before I go back there," or whatever. And that's how he found out.
Yeah, it just also doesn't feel like we said earlier, she's not exactly hiding. If he wanted to find her, it doesn't feel like he'd need a PI or a Mike Ehrmantraut to do that.
The white pages might be fine.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? She works. This is the time, of landlines, which we saw an example of there, and white pages. You used to just be able to look up someone's number pretty simply if you wanted to, if you knew where they were at. Calling the operator. I was thinking about that when he's in the payphone. It's sort of like, when was the last time that was even possible to do like that? Maybe 12 years ago. Whatever.
It's
2010.
the period piece aspects of the show are so fun. Like seeing YouTube has been around for, I guess, about 4 years when Marion is looking at the cat videos, but you definitely see the early days of it. It's fun.
Yeah. Pablo Asuna, thank you for the 499. Who else has the same Costco trash can as Kim? LOL. On a serious note, gonna miss your BCS breakdowns just as much as the episodes. Thanks for everything. I do not have that trash can. Do you have that, Gil?
I don't believe I do. I'm gonna have to rewatch the scene. But you know what? Now that I think about it, I didn't get my trash can at Costco. I definitely didn't. So I guess not.
Yeah, and I did notice that it was one of those conspicuous things, but I didn't remember ever having that exact same one. I guess we didn't really touch on the boyfriend much, and he's the one that's taking out the trash there. I mean, nothing wrong with the guy, right? You know what I mean? But what a strange thing to have him saying "yep" while they make love. How for that to be a big part of his character it's a really strange. I didn't mention that when I made the video, just because it didn't really fit with any of the other stuff that I was talking about with her. But it's a strange tick. You were talking about earlier about how even the insignificant characters, they find a way to make them interesting
and memorable.
And that one is what I'll remember about that guy.
I mean, as much as Vince Gilligan, it keeps saying, there's nothing intrinsically wrong with the life Kim is living. I mean, I feel like every time I say that, I'm playing a little bit of mental gymnastics, jumping over some of these things.
Yeah, I mean, they could have shown it in a way more neutral light if they weren't wanting us to. Her boyfriend did not have to say that during intercourse if they wanted that to be more normal looking.
Right.
Joe Luzzy, thank you for the 199. Why did Francesca not seem happy to see Kim? I thought about this a little bit. I think one of the things about Francesca is that I think about differently. One of the things I think about, I look at her a little bit differently because I know that she listens to Saul Goodman 24 hours a day now as he's trying to cope with, you know, what he's doing, as he's using this method of being full blown all the time, always on the headset, talking to Francesca to deal with life. She has to deal with that all the time. And I don't know if there was something else implied there, but I feel like you know, in a vacuum, Francesca's progression as a character makes sense. But I did think that was a little bit weird that there wasn't some moment where she was sort of like, "Hey, Kim, sorry that went that way," or something, you know?
Right.
Did you pick up on anything, like any other implication there,
I
Gil?
don't know. The overriding thing for me was just that this is probably a very uncomfortable situation.
Yeah.
So it's hard to tell, looking at the mix of stuff Francesca's feeling in that scene, how much of that is specifically directed at Kim versus just this is really awkward and uncomfortable. I'm beaten down because I'm sick of this Saul Goodman guy, and now I'm about to watch this woman who I once respected have to face this just scummy version of the man she once loved, and she has to kind of stand there in between it. So I can imagine why there wouldn't be a lot of warmth there. Um, but yeah, I might just have to rewatch the scene. But that was kind of the overriding thing for me.
Yeah, and I didn't think about it while I was watching, but just now when you were talking, I was just realizing that he was there for an hour. Like he made Kim sit outside for an hour, right? So they could have, it could have just been as simple as they had that conversation off screen, because you can tell that Francesca is really in a hurry to get out of there when she talks to him, and she wants him to bring her in so they can get it over with and move on. So it could be referring to that as well, that, you know, that
Yeah.
she's just stressed because they've been there so long, and now she wants to get out of there, and they already talked outside.
Yeah, that's a very
Uh,
good point. Yeah.
Crates Clouds, thank you for the 4.99. Where do you think the writers get the scams from? Research or actual crimes? I mean, it's a good question. If you listen to the Insider podcast, they do provide a lot of details. I can't think of anything specific about any of the scams, though, off the top of my
I
head.
could think of one actually.
Okay, go
One
ahead.
instance where they got a scam from real, well, kind of a scam, but the travel wire of somebody going through the roof, I think, and then to the other side. I believe they said they read about that happening somewhere, and that's where they got the idea. That's the one example I could think of. But otherwise, I know that in general they talk about how they take a lot of time planning this stuff out and just bounce a lot of ideas in the writer's room, and kind of flesh them out. But that's at least one example where I can think of inspiration coming from real life.
Yeah, I mean, the obvious one that always comes up when I think about actual crimes and sort of real life stuff is that Tom Schnauz read the article about the people making meth in the RV, and then he talked to Vince Gilligan, and that sort of became the idea for the show for
Mhm.
Breaking Bad. But you know, I do remember them saying that, you know, that they none of them have ever done this sort of stuff, but they pull off of, you know, other similar things that happen in like those kinds of environments. You know what I mean? Like if you think about, you know, you think about the last scam at the mall, he's basically, you know, the way that they dictate that is they're like, okay, who is the character? He's really good at using what's available to him. So what's available to this guy in the mall setting? And then you go from there, you know, like what would he be able to do, you know, in that situation.
Mhm.
Joe Luzzy, thank you for the 4.99. Do you think it's possible Kim never filed divorce papers and therefore has to decide if she has to testify against Jimmy or not? I saw this quite a bit in the comments in my video yesterday or last night whenever I uploaded, and I've never been a big fan of the courtroom, the final courtroom showdown thing. I kind of think it would just be, it'd make more sense if Jimmy's, to me, it's about whether Jimmy makes the decision to take responsibility more than what happens after that fact. So I don't really think about these kind of scenarios. Nothing that we saw in that scene made it like, okay, maybe she's not going to file these.
Right.
It's really like you're working backwards, I think, from the idea that that might have been important for how they got married in the first place, was because of the spousal privilege. So you're trying to get to a place where it would make sense for her to do that. But in the scene itself, there's nothing to tell us that she's on the fence about filing the papers, or that talking to him or talking to, Jesse might have changed her mind on that. Do you think?
No, I mean, I agree with everything you just said. And we've brought up the idea a few times now of this ending in court somehow. And now that we're approaching the final episode, logistically, it feels tough for me to get there. I feel like there's not enough room. We've, of course, seen time skips. So it's possible, but I don't know. I have a hard time picturing it at this point.
Yeah, it's a longer episode. I know. I don't know exactly how long. I haven't seen it or anything like that. But I did see that the runtime is significantly longer, but not like an hour and a half or anything. It's like maybe 60 minutes instead of 47 or something like that. Oscar Alvarez, thank you for the $4.99. I think that the $730K in the bank account is a foreshadowing that Saul will switch Walter's mind from 737 is enough to I'm in the empire business. I, I, I mean, it could be, but I mean, I think it's been a while since I rewatched Breaking Bad. But I mean, he had a pretty organic, that happened pretty organically, him making that choice, and
Right.
he got something out of being Heisenberg, about the respect that came with, and the fear and everything else. I don't know how Jimmy could really affect that, really. I mean, I think that's about who he is in his nature, and what this situation allowed to come out, not so much of like him making a decision. 737 is enough is the kind of thing that you tell yourself, like when you want to do something wrong. You want to say, oh, this is wrong, but hey, I'll only do it this one time because I'll get this thing that I need, and then I'll walk away from it. And it just doesn't really work like that.
Yeah, I think this would be another way of telling us that Saul once again views himself as kind of paramount in the journey Walt took. And I think they already told us that in a way that doesn't diminish any of Walt's choices, because there was no bearing on that. Saul did convince Walt to do something, but it was more logistics. It had nothing to do with Walt's ambitions and what he wanted to accomplish. This feels a little bit like it risks taking away from everything you just said about Walt, how he had that organic transition from I'm doing it for the money to why am I really doing this? Do we need to see that Saul had something to do with that? I'm not sure that we do. So I'm not sure about that one.
Yeah. Pablo Vasquez, thank you for the AR $20. Could the cry and confession be a plan to defend Jim? Well, currently there is no defending Jim unless Jim turns himself in. So I guess we'll cross that bridge when we come to it, because I don't think I think that was her. Her crying, I think, was her realizing it, feeling that the weight had been lifted of carrying that around for 6 years. I think we're seeing her be able to experience that emotion that she tried to keep buried, and we see Jimmy trying to keep that buried, and it's coming out in all these crazy ways of him doing all of what he's doing. And hers came out in a more natural and healthy way, as she cried on the shuttle bus. KIK01, thank you for the $5. Love new and old Jeff, but on the Insider podcast, Gould hinted the recast changed the direction of the story. Will we ever find out what that plot was? I didn't hear this. I heard in the one last week, Tom Schnell said that they actually wrote the part for Don Harvey. They didn't write it for Pat Healy. So this is conflict. This is in conflict with the information that I had already absorbed. So I can't really speak to it. Um,
Yeah, I know, Pete.
they
I
wrote
heard
they
the same thing. Yeah.
because they wrote, and this is the one time in the history of this show that they wrote they broke the entire story before they started filming. You know what I mean? So in the past, they might have been able to adapt and change a little bit after they got to know the actor and the meeting with the meeting with Kim and Jesse is an example of that, of two characters who got much expanded roles after they saw what they could do. But I don't think this is my understanding on this situation was that it there wasn't really much that they could actually change. It was they wrote it for one actor, they couldn't get him, they got somebody they thought would do a good job, and I think that he mostly has. Sir Torchington, thank you for the 9.99. Good to see you. Heard Bill Burr say that three comedian actors, Saul, QB, and Huel, on Breaking Bad were holding down the best drama on TV for a scene in Saul's office. I feel the same about Odin Kirk and Carol Burnett last night. Yeah, I don't. Carol Burnett is considered a fantastic legendary actor, but I don't know of much drama that she's done. And so it's pretty amazing to see that in her late 80s. I mean, I remember seeing a Law and Order or something like that where she was in a different kind of, in a more serious kind of role, and she was great at it. But I don't think that's a part of her catalog per se. You know. I did think that they did a great job with what they had, and it was one of those things that, like, it was kind of inevitable. We knew that you don't really bring her in there just to be the sweet old lady drinking schnapps, but she rose to the occasion, definitely.
Yeah, definitely.
Radio Chaos, thank you for the $5 Canadian. Kim gave up Jimmy in the scheme, but still lied when she didn't know if he was alive or dead. Yeah, we just touched on this. That wasn't something that was immediately apparent to me, just because I was like mesmerized with what might happen in that. But it's something that does come up after the fact, and Gil touched on it before. Let's see here. Francesco Fauti, thank you for the 199 euro. Don't you think the Jesse cameo was unnecessary? Sorta, yeah. But like I said, they pretty much, the writers had said that they did it because they wanted to do it and it made sense. And Gil touched on it a little bit, and it's one of the things that I said in my video. These two characters are very similar in the space that they occupy in the respective series, and there's a natural, it makes sense for them to share the screen as far as who they are, and then in that, in that role or whatever. But the plot may not have dictated it, but I thought it worked fine just anyways, because it wasn't that unbelievable. Albuquerque is a small town. These people would interact with each other on some levels, and those are all things that were set up in the story that they could pull on if they wanted to. Nava down south, thank you for the $5. Does Cheryl feel any guilt for Howard's death? She seemed to treat him badly, like the coffee pour spill in his final days. um you know I think that was one of the really, really gutting parts of episode 609, was seeing Kim gaslight her and kind of make sure that she felt some guilt for Howard's death, at least, and not seeing his addiction. um I'm not sure. We don't know enough to know, like, what he did, why there was that rift in their relationship. We just know that they had that. But yeah, I think it's reasonable to say that she that anytime something unexpected like that happens, that you're going to feel some guilt.
Yeah.
Craig Otto, thank you for the $5. Pete, is it nice to not have Gus in the last few episodes so you don't accidentally call Gil Gus? Yeah, thanks for this is probably going to do that now. Please have an all-star blowout for the last episode. Yeah,
I think I'm busy next week. I don't know. I'm just kidding. I'll be here.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm going to. The last couple of weeks I've been really kind of stretched thin, and it's been a little bit hard to plan ahead. But I do want to. This is a big event that's coming up, so I'm gonna, and I appreciate the people that have come on and talked to me. So I'm gonna try to get everyone involved in one way or the other. But I'm not exactly sure what that looks like. But yeah, it's nice to not have too much Gus bouncing around in there, because for some reason when I see the word and I try to say Gil's name, I absorb it and they get mixed together. 8HNIC8, thank you for the 199. Thought the young PD Kim sees in Albuquerque was Esposito. Yeah, I've seen that bouncing around. I saw that on a couple people pointing that out on Twitter. I went and looked at the credits. She's not credited. The actor that played her is not credited, and there's nobody in there that there's no way that I could find to verify that. It's a good idea, but I don't know if it's the truth or not. Ken Jaworski, thank you for the $4.99. Jerome Giorndo, thank you for the $5. I feel like the last episode's going to end with the big trial against Jimmy. Kim testifying. I think Seinfeld's finale, but more depressing. Yeah, we've answered this a couple times recently. I don't really have much else to say about it. If it happens, it happens. But I don't. It's not what I expect to see. And I kind of then I don't mean to just brush it off, but I was trying to remember exactly how the Seinfeld finale played out, and I can't. Do you have anything to add on the
on the Seinfeld front? They basically the characters in that show were obviously known for being pretty cynical toward their fellow man. So there was somebody that I think was getting robbed or something, and they filmed him and were kind of just laughing at him. So under a new Good Samaritan law, they all get arrested, put on trial, and they use the trial as a way to bring back like all the supporting characters who appeared in the series over time to kind of give testimony about their character, talk about all the awful things they've done, and then they end up in prison. Spoilers for Seinfeld.
Yeah, I remember that they ended up, and I remember that it seemed to be like it was not a popular finale when it happened.
No, people were not happy with it.
Yeah, but I couldn't remember the details, and I think that kind of brings me back up to speed. Jay Diaz, thank you for the $5. Could Jimmy really possibly wind up in Belize? LOL. I think it's possible. He's on a self-destructive bent,
Yeah, it's like you said before. It's either escape, prison, or death. Escape feels hard to imagine because we kind of already saw escape, and now we're in the aftermath of that. Are they just going to do that again? So it feels like prison or death is what it feels like. I feel like that's what they want us to be thinking. So I don't know. It's hard to see where they're going with this.
There's always the option that it picks up in the next episode, and he comes back into to Marion's house, and he gives her a big, long, deep kiss, and it turns out to be that they escape together as a completely different romance that we didn't see coming. Yeah, because I think there's a little bit of chemistry there. I could be wrong, but I think there's something. They could build something there. Jimmy Goodman, thank you for the €4.99. What do you think the significance of opening season 6 with Saul's house and the bottle cap was? Can't believe there's one episode left. What a show. Well, I think it was a tease. Saul's house was not something that we were familiar with, and so whenever he wakes up there in 609, and they may not even have constructed it this way, but it worked this way, that whenever we have that that abrupt cut from the trauma of losing Kim straight into him being Saul Goodman, spinning around on the rotating bed with a hooker. I think it makes sense for us to already kind of know where he's at when we see that. Otherwise, we're like, is he in a hotel? Is he, is like where exactly is he doing this? And the bottle cap, I think it was for us to, to wonder, to kind of know that Kim wasn't going to be in his life, and the house also does that a bit because it's so gaudy and it doesn't seem to have any of her touches, whenever we go through it. But the bottle cap was just, a way for us to think about how could that be? How could her trophy of their time together that she kept for all those seasons, how would she leave that behind, and what would that mean?
Yeah, and I think I think a lot of people interpreted it as, and I think to your credit, I think this is the way you saw it initially, is that Kim's probably not around and Jimmy kept it as a keepsake. And now in retrospect, it tells us that he held on to it. Clearly, he was still holding on to the memory of Kim. And I think we're seeing the payoff to it now. I think if he had already let go of any hope of a reunion with Kim, then her rejection a couple of episodes ago wouldn't have sent him off the deep end the way it did. He was still holding on to hope. He got rejected, and now he's going on this reckless bender. If he didn't have hope, he maybe wouldn't have even reached out to her, or if he did and got rejected, it wouldn't have mattered. So, so I think the stopper is sort of a visual representation of that idea.
Yeah, and I don't want to go to a rabbit hole because I'm a lot of questions behind here, but I'm not sure it makes 100% sense of how he saved a lot of that stuff. Like some of that stuff was like future Easter eggs. Some of it was just straight up Easter eggs. I'm not 100% sure that if you really think about it hard, it makes sense, like, because he kept all these different memories of scams and things, and that tells us that it's an important part of his life, and it's something that he looks back on in the absence of being Jimmy McGill, of having his life with Kim. But does it really make sense for the character to keep his shoes from the mall and all these other mementos from things that he did wrong if he's still actively committing crimes?
Right.
Carl Borchers, thank you for the $9.99. Kim running away to Florida and taking a job beneath her reminds me of McMurphy in China Beach, leaving nursing and working at the orange factory and hooking up with Gator Man, a guy she didn't love. Unfortunately, I have no idea what any of that stuff you're talking about is.
Well, Pete, obviously China Beach is a drama from 1988 that ran for 4 seasons, starring Dana Delaney. I've just Googled it on my other tab.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah. impressive recall there. But yeah, I didn't watch it. I don't know.
I mean, that sounds very similar. So
yes,
yeah, I'm kind of curious. I'm at least going to look at the Wikipedia article about this show later because that's intriguing if they're that similar.
Well, hopefully there's other people in the chat who have seen it, and you guys can discuss it. And I'll just have to say thank you for the $9.99 because that's about all I can say. Word Nerd, nice rhyming name. 7-Eleven, thank you for the 20. That is very generous. Kim's sad life in Florida is her self-inflicted penance, or the most punishment she can inflict on herself until she gets Saul's call. He helps her figure out the real step towards redemption, the confession. Love you guys. All right. Well, thank you for that. And, it's kind of funny because he's just throwing it out there like, why don't you turn yourself in? And then she's sort of like, okay, that does make a lot of sense now that you bring it up. I do wonder if him saying that Fring's dead, Lalo's apparently dead. He's still a little bit afraid of Lalo, but he believes that he's dead. Mike's dead. I do wonder if those two things in conjunction, those two things working together if that is part of why she did it. You know what I mean? Because going back to Albuquerque before, you know, I mean, she did walk up to Gus Fring's house with a gun. You know what I mean? And she would have seen that in the news. So it's not like him saying it is necessarily the thing, but the fact that they are all dead, you know, I wonder if that has something to do with it too. You know?
Yeah, I think it might, but I don't necessarily think that diminishes her choice to go confess. And I'm not saying you're
No.
saying that, but I think she probably thinks it diminishes it. I think her confession maybe feels a little bit hollow. But a few episodes ago, when I was kind of thinking out loud that it would be nice for Kim to have walked away. She made the right choice. She learned her lesson. Maybe she gets to go be happy. And some people replied saying, you know, why does she get off scot-free? And I think that's a fair point. She if she wants true redemption, she needs to confess. But there was a time there where confessing may have meant a death sentence, right? If she knows too much, like you said, she went to Gus's house with a gun intent on shooting him. And I don't think execution is a fitting punishment for her crime, right? As much as we say she had a role in Howard's death, she did not commit murder. She did something bad that happened to lead to Howard's death, but Lalo pulled the trigger. So she needs to confess. She needs to incur some sort of punishment for what she did, but I don't think it's death. So I think it's complicated. So I do think that may have been in the mix. I can now go confess because all those people are dead. And also, it's a reminder of there is a thing that you should do if you really want to do the right thing. So I think both are in the mix. But like I said, I don't think it diminishes the choice necessarily.
Yeah, and there's something to be said for not doing, well, like understanding that you did something wrong and then not doing it again. You
True.
know,
Yeah,
like
true.
the way that she's living, and you know, it's been you know, the idea of penance is out there and all of that stuff, self imposed exile. But that is you know, that's not nothing. You know, like if you do something terrible and then you make it your point to never do it again, that's a lot more than a lot of people will ever do. And it also solves the problem of that not happening again, you know?
Right. Yeah, no,
Kenny
agreed.
Jawor yeah. Kenny Jaworski, thank you for the 4.99. Maybe he turns himself in, but no charges can stick for various reasons, and he goes free with nowhere left to go. Maybe. I think that and I think that they would be able to make charges stick against Gene, Saul, Jimmy, because they got all of his shell companies. You know, we kind of got that information last episode that they found all the money he squirreled away. It sounds like there was a paper trail. I don't think this is the same situation as there being no evidence about what happened to Howard. I think they do actually have some stuff on Saul. What do you think?
No, I agree. I mean, the fact that they're still following Francesca and they're so intent on finding Saul, I think they have a solid case. The only thing they're missing is Saul himself.
Yeah. Trader Chris, thank you for the 9.99. Why did Saul go into hiding in the first place? The only person that can connect him is Walt's wife, which wouldn't say anything because of her paralyzed boss. So how would he become a person of interest? You know, this is a thing that comes up over and over again, and you know, I'll just defer to what the writers have said recently, because I mean, this never was a question to me. He was obviously, you know, doing a lot of the facilitating of a criminal enterprise. There's RICO charges in the United States, you know, that if you that came into existence just for this, you know, just for this kind of situation, you know. That, you know, it was more about organized crime, but that's what he was doing. He was a member of a criminal conspiracy, an organized criminal enterprise, and he was a willing participant in doing those things. And they have ways to prosecute someone who does exactly that. But you know what they said is that, you know, they're looking for him, and you know, because of the crimes that they know of. And then like I said, that in the last one, you know, they did make that explicit, based on what she told him on the phone, and he understands that it's not up in the air. They're definitely chasing after him. Clive J, thank you for the $10. Wasn't that Crispy Esposito with the ponytail putting the tie on the guy in the courthouse? Makes sense. She'd become a public defender, and the timeline adds up. Yeah, we touched on that earlier. Like I said, I looked, I didn't see anything in the credits or on IMDb or anything like that, but I like the idea. I think it's a good idea. Gian Torones, thank you for the $5. The redemption episode I didn't realize I needed. After 612, I'm more okay now with whatever Gene decides, though I'm still hoping for his redemption. I agree. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. And Pete, I kind of was having so much fun. I lost track of time, and I see we're almost at the 2-hour mark. So I probably need to sign off here shortly, but maybe we do one more question I can go out on.
All right. Yeah. Sorry. I didn't realize we got to 2 hours already either. So I guess we were having fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Sorry. I don't know. I guess for this, I think we've talked about it so many times with the idea of redemption. Yeah, I agree. I'm still hoping for Gene's redemption.
Yeah. I mean, I think we're supposed to, it's not wrong. Like I see people angry comments all the time. Like, how could you be thinking that, how could you're so dumb for wanting that? It's like, I think pretty plainly, that's what the show wants us to think, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's pretty unambiguous. I mean, what
it doesn't mean that's what we're going to get. It doesn't mean that's what we're going to get, but that's what they're trying to say. They're saying this, how does a good guy become a bad guy? And how do we feel about that? Right.
Yeah, exactly.
We know him when he was a good guy, so we don't want him to be that bad guy anymore.
Right.
Excuse me. Kunai Panchal, thank you for the A799. Maybe Gene calls the disappearer. The van arrives, but the FBI are in it. Maybe Kim provided details when she came to ABQ. That could be an apt end. All right, Gil, you have to get going. So what do you think about that?
Well, we touched on this earlier. I guess this adds the wrinkle that Kim's in on it. I don't think it's impossible that Kim does something in the finale to further squeeze Gene, because if she feels like for her to get full redemption, she needs to completely clear out everything she's lying about and let everything out, then the one thing she's still held on to is that she's protecting Jimmy. I've even seen some people interpreted her crying as her having decided, I'm going to go turn in Saul, essentially. That's not the way I interpreted it.
No.
But I don't think it's impossible that she makes that decision in the final episode. In terms of the van arriving and it being a setup, it does feel like whatever happens in the next episode, the walls are closing in right now, and I think we're going to continue to see them close in. So that may include an attempt to disappear, and seeing that that's no longer an option. But we also talked about the fact that we want to see redemption, right? So that means we want to see Gene make the choice to face up to his actions, which would mean the disappearer is available, but he makes the choice not to use it. Again, it's possible that the disappearer is not available, and he still makes that choice. But it feels like for that choice to really be meaningful, it has to be made before every other avenue has been taken away. If that's the only choice available, it's kind of less interesting. But also, that wouldn't necessarily be wrong. That could be the thing they're deciding to say about this character. They could decide that he is irredeemable. This is a cautionary tale. You have watched somebody harden themselves into a corrupted personality, and that's it. He made these mistakes. Hey, don't make those mistakes in your life. That could be the choice they make.
Yeah. And, we were talking earlier about, we didn't particularly want to see her help him in being his lawyer. I definitely think that would diminish his decision, like you're saying, if she made it for him by turning him in. You know what I mean? Like that's no redemption at all for him. That's just him getting caught and being held accountable. against his will. So yeah, I think that that's about all I have to say on that. Do you want to say anything before you dip out?
Yeah, I'll just say thank you again for having me on. And this has been a really fun way to celebrate the end of this series. And I'll just say for big episodes of Better Call Saul, over on One Take, we like to do a sort of watch party, a pre-show. So we'll definitely be doing something like that for the finale, probably a few episodes before the finale actually airs. So if you are like me and on Monday you're going to be distracted all day just thinking, hey, the final episode of Better Call Saul is tonight, then you can join us in sitting there talking about the show while we wait for it to air. And then Pete,
You
I'm
guys
sure.
actually had Bill Oakley himself on one of those shows too, right?
Yeah, that was one of the best moments of my YouTube career. Is we got Peter DeSeth on, who plays Bill Oakley. We did a sort of trivia night for Better Call Saul, and we figured we needed a good district attorney to keep an eye on things and make sure nobody cheats. Now, little did I know that by then he'd already become a defense attorney, so I kind of messed that up.
Mm,
But yeah, he made an appearance, which was very cool.
yeah. All right. Yeah, we'll do this at least one more time next week. So I'll see you then. And thanks again for coming on.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, let's
For
talk
sure.
soon.
Talk to you
Yeah.
soon. Take care, everybody.
All right, DB DB Cooper. Thank you for the 4.99. Was that a Godfather reference when Kim leaves Saul's office? The shot when Kay leaves Michael in his office and they close the door behind him. Um, I didn't pick up on that myself. It's possible. I thought what really stood out to me about that was how infuriating it is the way that that works, and I thought a lot back to to the way Chuck interacted with Jimmy the last time they saw each other. When he told him, "You never really mattered to me. It never really mattered that much to me," or whatever. However, he said that. And I just think, the focus there was Kim trying to think about what she might say, and there really not being anything that she could say. Deccanin, thank you for the 201 yen, I think. Do BCS more broken opening credits mean something? I think it's just the degradation of the VHSs, the degradation of the character, the effect that him living that way has on him as a human being, and the question that comes along with that of, hey, is Jimmy still inside there somewhere? Can he come back out? We saw a little bit of that in the last episode, but it's not really clear how it's going to play out. Beyond that, it's open for interpretation. Jay Castria, thank you for the $1.99. Gene hitting the piano note real loud was reckless. It was odd. I mean, I guess he was testing the waters. He's expecting that the guy might be so out of it that he wouldn't realize it. But I kind of thought the same thing. Not really necessary. Bunch of characters that I can't read. 3 dots, 8 dots, 9 dots, whatever it is. Thank you for the 199. Cancer guy equals James Link. And yeah, I saw that. And this is I can't remember the reference, but this is actually a reference to something else. I can't remember though. Sorry. That is his name. And it's based on a character or a person in real life as well. Sam Jan, thank you for the $5. So if Jimmy copies or copes with pain by scheming and becoming Saul, and Chuck caused Jimmy an immense amount of pain in life, what do you all think are the implications? Um, I think, it's interesting if you go back and look how this is right from, season 1, where they decided to have his old friend Marco back home, die. And that's what his initial foray, like where he walks away from Mesa Verde and his initial foray into going back into being Slippin' Jimmy. This is pre-Saul, obviously, but it's interesting that he laid out that defense mechanism early on, and then they build off that. And Chuck was a little bit different, I think, because they were brothers, and that had a different effect because he really cared about Chuck, even though Chuck treated him terribly. What's interesting about him is that after he died, that's when we see, when Jimmy can't handle when Jimmy can't handle that after it happens, that's when he starts selling, going out at night and selling the burner phones, and started doing, it set him on the path of using the name Saul Goodman directly. And so, I think it's just been a progression of, like, as more stuff gets piled on, he just doubles down on that mechanism, that coping mechanism. And he never got to even really have much time to get over what happened with Chuck, even like naturally, even though he's not doing any of the healthy stuff that might make that happen a little bit faster, because Lalo came into his life, and he did his trip through the desert before, like, there's not that much time that passed in between those two events. Kiko01, thank you for the $8. Given Odekirk's recent IG activity, can we expect Quentin Tarantino as the surprise co-director for the series finale? Thank you for putting the subtext there in the parentheses afterwards, because I didn't understand the Quentin Tarantino connection. I don't know what to say about that, except for, man, the internet just absolutely blew up with that in a 24-hour period. It was something to behold. Like, I was sort of like, am I missing something here, or is it just about him following that account? And now it seems to mostly have moved back into the background. Jed Gould, thank you for the $1.99. Kim's decision avoidance is PTSD. I think that could be part of it. I mean, I think that she is experiencing PSD for sure, just in the same way that Jimmy is. I think that part of what she's doing, though, is a choice, but I could be wrong. I definitely could be wrong. Cookie, thank you for the $4.99. What is the one question you would like to have an answer to in the series finale? I mean, I would like to think of something a little more exotic, but I mean, I really just want to know what's going on with Jimmy, how much Jimmy is inside there, and will it be able to come back out? Will he be able to face all of this stuff that he hasn't been able to, that's caused all these problems? Yep. I interpreted it as yep, as we see on the screen right here. I found it kind of interesting how some people, I get the yup is sort of a season 5 reference to Kevin Wachtel's father and that great scene. But I thought the way that they were saying it in this episode was YEP rather than YUP. But thank you for the $2, Blue Stomiv. I'm not sure what the general consensus is on how to spell that. I've seen both in the comments of my last video, though. Tin Omen, thank you for the 5. Just to think, this all started with Chuck getting Jimmy out of jail in Cicero. Yeah, I mean, if you keep going back, you can think of a thing that happened before that too. So many things happened in both of their lives and everybody else's lives in there. But yeah, I mean, on some level, you could say it all started with a Chicago sunroof. Abdul Raham, thank you for the 5. Is Kim waited 4 years to get divorced, or am I missing something? I don't think the timeline is clear there. Emilio doesn't necessarily make it in 2008 because The way that Jimmy says that, or not the way Jesse brings that up to Walt before is that he got him off a couple of times in the past. It doesn't really say exactly when that is. So I was talking to a few different people. Kiwi was one of them yesterday. We were trying to think of a way to make it more, focus it into an actual year, and I don't think it's possible from just what we saw on screen. It's sometime, like I said earlier, it's sometime after they did the remodeling. So it's sometime after 2004 and sometime before he worked with Walter White, which is 2008. But you have a big window there. One of the things that Kiwi was saying that kind of made sense was that he thought that this interaction, with the signing of the papers is before what we saw in the 209 flash forward when we saw him waking up and, um, you know, doing the whole routine. So beyond that, I can't really say for sure. K Foster, thank you for the $5. In Breaking Bad, two bodies are found after the super lab explodes. With Kim's confession, can they connect the dots? No, the two bodies they found in the super lab were the two guards that were upstairs when they burn it. So we already know who those two people are. And Kim's confession, she doesn't know where the bodies are buried. No one told them where they went. So nothing that she says would really put the police onto that, other than like, circumstantial stuff. Like she went to, I know it says in the paper and the things you can see, like she talks about how she went to Gus Fring's house and things like that. So, I mean, they might search, I guess, but why would they? There's nothing to tell them that the bodies are underneath the lab, to answer your question. Nothing at all, as far as I can tell. Dapper Dave, 2021. Thank you for the $2. New favorite word in the English dictionary. Yep. It was fun. It was fun how it popped up in other parts of the episode too, like this scene that that's up on the screen right now. But it was definitely a Florida thing, but they also used it in a couple of other different situations in the conversations to kind of echo what was going on there. True_West, thank you for the $4.99. Jimmy's purgatory would be prison, helping his fellow prisoners and likely former clients, full of dead-end scams for the rest of his life. Yeah, I mean, this is a popular idea. I don't know. I wouldn't need to see that. I think we already know enough about Jimmy McGill / Saul Goodman / Gene Takovic that if he does go to prison at the end, I think we can all kind of imagine what that might look like. And some people would think that that's a decent existence, maybe better even than what he's experiencing in Omaha, working at the Cinnabon. I tend to think that prison is always worse than not being in prison, but I get that. I get the idea of what they're saying, that he would probably be able to, make his way in that environment better than some people based on his, skills and things. My Echo, My Shadow, and Me, thank you for the $9.99. Moment of silence for our last days of anticipation for this great story. A moment of appreciation, you guys, Courtney and Kiwi, for giving this community a voice. Ray's bus scene made me cry. It was a terribly touching moment. I didn't get choked up when I was watching it. I don't think, I am, that does happen to me quite often when I'm watching TV. This kind of hit different in just that there was a relief behind it, and I was just so in awe of the actual performance and the way they put it together. Like I kind of lost a little bit of the emotion because it was just so absolutely impressive. But I totally don't think you were alone in that. I mean, it was a moving scene, and thanks for the 9.99. Thanks for the moment of appreciation. Um, I'm glad that you're here. I'm glad that you're here. Rennie 180 HD. Thank you for the 2. Does Gene and Marion episode end parallel to Hank and Walt? Um, I mean, I'm not sure. To me, this is sort of he's just on, like, I kind of feel like Marion's story is over in a way. Like, she served her purpose as far as him being on the run. I don't see how she would really play a major role in anything going forward. So logistically, it's a little bit different. But yeah, I mean, I see where you're coming from with that. Emma, thank you for the $10. I wonder if we see a Kim scene, how they'll make Gene's ending satisfying with how little time is left to end the story. I think knowing that Ed can't show up makes Gene getting caught very likely. Yeah, those are all good points. Like we've touched on a bit already, that the Ed thing, I mean, it's definitely being teased in the teaser, but if it gets to the point where he's actively thinking about that, the hope is that he'll change his mind, and he'll face it, and he'll do what he has to do in order to kind of move past this place he's been stuck in, as he just keeps, throwing scams on top of scams to numb the pain. I don't think that I'm not really worried about time, though. Like I said a while ago, there's only really the 2 questions left now. It's a really big story and a really big world, but they've pretty efficiently checked off all the boxes. Like, if people were kind of waiting around to see if there was going to be more cartel or more, you know, answers about Breaking Bad stuff, I mean, I think they kind of shut the door on that here. Like, so it's really just another hour or so of seeing the resolution of him being on the run. So I'm not too worried about time, but we'll see. Ramsey Bolton, thank you for the €5. Do you think they find Howard's body in the lab because of Kim's confession? Just touched on this with another question, and my answer would be no. I don't really, other than her saying that she went to Gus's house and that Mike, helped cover it up. I don't really see how that puts them on the lab, and um, it's a cold case in a way too at this point. So it just depends, I guess, but I don't really see how that would make the story better. But we'll have to wait and see. Brian Heffron, thank you for the $5. Any word on the length of the finale? Is it any longer? I believe so. I can't point you to a reference. I did see someone talking about the runtime, and it was complicated because they show, the TV guide or whatever that they use. It says how long, when the episode starts and when it ends. So that doesn't take into consideration the commercial breaks. So there was a whole thing of, like, this is how many commercials are usually in an episode, and this is when it would usually end. And I believe it said that it was going to be more than an hour, but nothing like 1.5 or anything like that. Just maybe just a little bit longer than 60 minutes, if I remember correctly. And that's without the commercial breaks, in which a usual episode is only in the 40 plus range, as far as I remember. Charlene Shi, thank you for the $10. What do you think is the significance of next episode's title, Saul Gone? Well, as is usually the case, there's more than one way to interpret the title. Waterworks, I guess, is our most recent example. It's where she works, and it's also her breakdown on the bus, and the raining and the Breaking Bad timeline. And there's quite a few different ways you could interpret it. Saul Gone, I think, is, his cover story's gone. Gene Takovic, he can't just remain in, um, in Omaha anymore. I think though, but when Saul Gone, I think I would like to think that method, that way of dealing with his trauma is gone, and he can get back to being Jimmy now that now that this life is been compromised, or however that plays out. I don't know. I'd be interested to hear what other people think about it, but Saul Goodman is kind of a funny way that he made the name, so Saul Gone for the ending seems pretty fitting. Almeida's Army, thank you for the 449 euro or pound, sorry. In my opinion, one more Mike Saul scene where Mike tells Jimmy that Lalo is dead, is buried next to Howard, and is able to get him found. Also, one more Chuck scene. The Chuck flashback feels more possible than any others. Now that we're pretty firmly focused on Jimmy McGill, the Mike thing telling him that Lalo is dead is kind of in contrast to the fact that he still doesn't really believe that, and that he mentioned that he still doesn't really believe that. I mean, you could say that it's just because he's so scared of Lalo that he doesn't believe what Mike tells him, but that would kind of undermine the whole idea of him telling him where Howard was buried. And I just don't see that. It doesn't seem like something Mike would do. I don't see the necessity of it, and it's not something he would do just to make Jimmy feel better, in my opinion. Okay, YouTuber. The YouTuber. Thank you for the $10. I can't help but be frustrated at why Gene didn't casually stroll out of the house and into Jeff's car. The cops wouldn't have been suspicious. Why did Jeff have to overcomplicate things? I think because they had no idea why the police were sitting there. That was the way I interpreted it when I was watching, is why are these guys sitting behind him? It's nighttime. There's other places they could have pulled up on the street. Why did they pick there to eat their food? I think it's just one of those things. It's easy to say that from where we're at watching, but when a cop car pulls up and you're actually committing a crime, in Gene's case, it's a little hard to think as cool and rational as you're talking about here, YouTuber. But I kind of get what you're saying. I just think that it was hilarious the way that he dealt with the situation. So I'm glad that happened. And I think, it's all coming from the fact that he had no idea why they were sitting behind him. Okay, dash. Thank you for the $5. Okay, I humbly bow out. Kim time equals diamond time. Just realized with therapists I have black and white trauma from my youth. At my dad's corner store, TV triggers it. Thank you, PP and Saul. All right, thanks, Double Dash, and thanks for the laugh. SK Agerball, thank you for the $2, and you are in the Yup camp, not the YEP, the YUP. Thank you for that $2. Big Ralph, thank you for the 10. Kim can't go back to Florida because Miracle Whip Kim no longer exists. Once she made the decision to admit what happened, she is no longer in that space. No more sprinklers, no more puzzles, no more yep. That's certainly an interpretation. I'm not saying that is not possible. Gil was kind of talking in that vein too, and I think that there is the direct implication that she's returned the rental car. She's on the shuttle. She's going back to the airport to fly away. Does something interrupt that? that's to be said. But I think at least what they showed us was that she was coming to Albuquerque to do what she could, and then she was going to fly somewhere else. And I took that as flying back to Florida to pick back up with her life. And she may be different, um, not being able to make decisions, not being able to have an opinion. All of that could be what's in her future, but I don't know that there was any implication that she was actually going to drop all that and walk away from it. I mean, she's been there for some time. She has an existence. She does participate in it. It's not like she's hiding. That's the part that's really important, I think, is that in a way she chooses that, and it serves a purpose in that it keeps her from doing things that could cause harm. So it's complicated, and I'm not really sure where they're going to go with it in the next episode, but I was definitely under the impression that she's going back. She came to do a thing and she did it, and now she'll go back in some uh, you know some capacity, even if she doesn't stay. To me, the happiest ending for Gene would be similar to the ending of his manipulation of Irene. He publicly admits all his crimes committed in BCS and Breaking Bad, and then turns himself in. Thanks for the comment. Yeah, and I think this is I mean, these are things that I've been saying, that my other guests have been saying over the weeks. I mean, it certainly seems like the most satisfying way to go. Um, how they'll make that come out, how that'll be, because they do the inevitable quite often, and they still manage to keep it kind of exciting, kind of surprising, kind of not exactly the way you expected it to come out. So I think there's a pretty good chance that's where they're headed, but I'm not sure how they're going to get there. ADHD whiskey, thank you for the $10. Gene timeline is Saul's dream from Ed's shop. He'll wreck his car in the dream, and it'll fade back to color. Walt wakes him up while Saul mutters the dust filter line. Dream stops Gene from going. Dream stops Gene from going to Nebraska. NE kind of threw me off there. I didn't read that as Nebraska at first. I'm not sure if you're serious. I'm for one. There's a couple of things that I really dislike in stories, and fake deaths and it was all a dream are the things that I have an aversion to. That to the point where I don't like to even factor them into what's happening. Sometimes with the fake deaths, that really screws me over because it's such a repeated thing that they do because of all the drama that's involved in it. But I feel safe in saying that this is not a dream, and I'm hoping that you're sort of saying this in a tongue-in-cheek way. But if you're not, and it turns out to be right, I'm not going to be happy. I can tell you, it won't be a fun stream. The last one will be, that would be there's always these threads of like, what would ruin the ending for you, and if a significant portion of what we saw turns out to be a dream, that is something that could ruin it for me. 8HNIC8, thank you for the 199. Her becoming a lawyer again could be to go versus Gene. I don't see that. I don't see the setup being there. I think I saw love in her eyes still, even after the awful situation of what happened in his office. In the black and white theme, she had a strong emotional response to him, and it's a really interesting thing that happens right before she hangs up. He comes off. He gets really aggressive, and he really kind of shows his ass, and the feds can't find me. I'm still out here going, like just terrible choices all the way through the conversation. And then he does come back to the softer spot, and he just says her name, Kim. and he's about to say something. He's about to go somewhere that she's not ready for, and she senses it, and that's where she finally gets the impetus to hang up the phone, to tell him, "I'm glad you're alive," and not go any further. And it's really interesting. And I don't know what it says about where they go from here, but none of it tells me that she, she's going to want to bring him down. You know, I could be wrong, but I don't see it going that way. Dual Deer, thank you for the $2. Do you see Saul having a happy ending? I mean, it gets harder and harder to imagine what that would even be, let alone thinking it might happen. I think redemption. I think in short of redemption, I think relief is what I'd be hoping for. Um, Happy ending. I mean, I don't think there's a way where him and Kim come back together. That's not even, they've even sort of poisoned that. There's a poison pill in that they're addicts, and being together is terrible for them and for people around them. So I did a video months ago about what would a happy ending even be, and I don't really know, and it hasn't gotten easier to try to figure out what that might be. I think satisfying and cathartic and things like that are words we ought to think about more than happy. PMCC, thank you for the $5. Kim's affidavit links Howard's death with the cartel for law enforcement. Does this trigger a closer look at the laundromat? And this is another question about this. It's another one where this is another situation like last week. People kept saying, "What if Kim decided to turn herself in because, or tell the truth about Howard?" And me and Courtney we both kind of kept kind of discrediting that because the timing didn't make sense. Why would 6 years would this happen? And that turned out, we turned out to be absolutely wrong about that. And there was a great explanation for why she did what she did, and that was because she talked to Gene, and that was her catalyst. And so, yeah, I mean, I don't think that this is not something that I worry about, Howard's body being discovered. I feel like it would feel like a postscript, like it's not necessary. Howard had an ending. Now his wife got, the affidavit, and all of this feels like enough for me. But if they do something like they did with this call, then okay, it's possible. I just, the lab is just not where my head is whenever I'm thinking about Jimmy being on the run and everything that's going on, like in the main story. It feels kind of sidebar stuff. Johan Gorder, thank you for the SEK 50. I'm not after bash any creator. Do you share the opinion that things has become less good without Gilligan? As soon as he came back, it's great again. No, I don't agree. I think seasons 4 and 5 were excellent. Um, and I think that from the beginning, he was the co-creator. He was never the showrunner, and he didn't have that final creative veto, except for maybe through his personal relationship with Peter Gould, and debts that are owed back and forth and all that kind of stuff. But I think that when you look at it in this way, I think you kind of take away from Peter Gould's and everyone else's contributions, and just on the face, I think seasons. I mean, I think he left partway through season 3, so he was only really involved in seasons 1 and 2. And I wouldn't say that season 6 feels like some kind of triumphant, return to form of being like season 1 and season 2 necessarily. I think one of the things, there's a couple of things I think that really there was sort of some privilege that this show had, like it got away with a lot of things that other shows wouldn't for a couple of reasons. And one of them was that they just came off on writing one of the greatest TV shows of all time. And the other is that they mostly can keep all of these people together. I mean, of course, people, move on and new people take their place, but they had this creative team that you know has just gotten better over time, because because it's all in the same. For 15 years there's been this orbit that all of it's in. So I can't agree with the premise that you're bringing up there, but you're welcome to have it. Moises Espejo, thank you for the $9.99. Okay, all I gotta say is Kim looking saucy ASF in this episode. Also, why she snitching? She a typical woman? Woe is me. After she caused all this, and then she tells homeboy's wife, "Nah, she's tripping." G kettle milk. Sounds like a bit of a joke. I hope. Other than that, I don't know. I mean, you're not asking a question really. You're telling me what you think, and she's snitching on herself, and just to say something, uh, you know, to add something to this is she's telling on herself, and she does actively cover for Saul by saying if he's even alive. So I don't think it's a classic case of her being a snitch. Jed Gould, thank you for the 1999. That's very generous. Of course, they can kill Saul, but not in color. Vince and Peter have made a crucial point that mentally preparing yourself to kill is necessary to kill. Not the same, but if you can do that, the next step is murder. Yeah. Vince and Peter have made a crucial point that mentally preparing yourself to kill is necessary to kill. I mean, I think so, but I was also just thinking about the beginning, because of Emilio's return. Walt never made himself, uh, he never made himself, prepared himself for that. That was a situation of survival, and that's kind of how I see what went down with Marion. I don't think that's a scenario he rehearsed, or he really thought. I mean, I think when you do what they do at the level they do, and we saw this in what happened with Howard, they figured they could, control the outcome, and that works to a certain extent, but there's always unintended consequences. And I think if he was able to kill her, it would be more about the fact that he was trying to survive, and that's what we were talking about. I know you asked this question a long time ago, and it's probably, related to the question or the conversation we were having then. But I mean, on some level, I agree, but I think that a lot of times people don't make the conscious. A lot of what happens is not murder. A lot of people die, but it's not premeditated murder, I guess, is where I'd leave that. Slaggy Starpuff, thank you for the $4.99. After episodes 11 and 12, am I alone in thinking 10 was meant to be the season opener if there had been no break? Better foreshadowing, momentum, etc. I was reading something before, and I can't remember exactly what it was, but they were talking about how this show has always been a little bit goofy in the way that they break up, um, the season breaks and stuff like that. 10, I think if you look at the structure, they had to have 10 to explain who Gene, like to really give us some time with Gene, because we've only had really small flash forward kind of cold open things. But I think they needed to have that in there before they could do what they did in 11 and 12. And I don't know if that lines up with what you're saying, as far as but we said earlier that it felt like it's almost like a different season. And I think that kind of is in the same vein. So I hope that makes sense. It was necessary. It wasn't, they had to show the flash forward to close out 609 to underline the fact that is how he reacts to what happens. And then they did have to also give us enough time with Gene to kind of understand where he's at, so that when he changes, when that world gets turned upside down, we know where his baseline is and what's happening. Grizzly Industries, thank you for the $4.99. Do you think Jeff will fold on Gene when he doesn't bail him out? No, I don't think he's in all that much trouble. It's mostly about his the suspicion that he was involved in the break-in, which he wasn't. So I think he's pretty solid in there. Marion will probably intervene one way or the other before too long anyways. We'll see. Let's see. Gertz Midurgis, thank you for the 2. Scurbs, sorry, I didn't mean to mispronounce that. Obviously, given name that you're using there, your real name, Scurbs. Think about the $2. Can I say that blonde Kim was way more hot? You can say that if you want to. I won't make any comments on it, but you can say that. You're allowed. Just they put this out after the episode, and I thought the in color shots were pretty interesting. Moises Esbejo, thank you for that $1.99. That life alert was a power move by Marion. Shaking my head. Yeah, I agree. The whole thing was a great setup. I mean, a lot of people had picked up on this, that she conspicuously wore that around her neck, and it might come into play. And I was glad to see that happen there, and it was it was short, but there was such a shift back and forth. Her saying, "Hey, I trusted you," and him being on the verge of just tearing it off of her neck and just being like, "Look, you can't do anything, old woman. This is the way things are going to play out," because he could if he wanted to do that. So yeah, it was a nice prop to really add some to add to that scene. D'Lo, thank you for the $2. Gil and Pete are awesome together. Great combo. Glad you like it, D'Lo. Thanks for that, and thanks for saying that. I was telling Gil, last week I did this when I'm maybe like 2 hours of sleep. I was telling him before, and I got so many awful comments about how terrible I am, and it was a little depressing. I mean, I got a lot of good ones too, but I'd already felt kind of bad about being spaced out because I didn't sleep, and then having so many people pile on and tell me that all my worst fears were true. It's nice to see the opposite sometimes. So thank you for that. Hakeem Sif, thank you for the $2. Why did Saul refrain from stopping Marion? That is the question, isn't it, Hakeem? We don't know exactly, but the implication is that the guy that we know that wasn't quite as bad as the guy that he is right now came back out. And was it because of who she is, or was it because of what something that happened before? There's certainly a lot of different ideas about that floating around, but we don't really know. I think the big takeaway is that there is a chance that he could turn around. You know what I mean? That's what we're supposed to take away from that, is that it's not as bleak as it's been over the last 2 episodes. Stringfellow Hawk, thank you for the 505. I feel the series ends with Kim and Saul Jimmy talking in jail through the glass with one or both of them hanging up the phone. The end. Could be. We've talked about it several times already. I mean, the prison could be in the future for him. That's definitely within the realm of possibilities. The glass booth, it's a common prop in that situation, so it's not a terrible idea. Salte, thank you for the $5. A scenario for the last episode is that Oakley represents Gene in court, loses, and while in jail, Saul slips one last time and cracks his head open. Okay. That is a scenario. You're correct, and I can follow everything you're saying there. Not sure if it'll happen or not, but thanks for letting me know about it. Jose Haley, thank you for the 199. Bet Jimmy and Kim don't meet in prison ever. Okay. I don't know if that's a direct rebuttal to the last one, but it works that way. So just think of everything I said to that poster and reverse it. Oscar Alvarez, thank you for the 499. Kim not being prosecuted is because Saul is missing. That is not completely true anymore. They will see each other in court. Well, I mean, Saul is the only person that could be a witness. But that's not to say that they would absolutely go forward if he was around. I mean, we'll see. But yeah, I mean, I think I've said it several times already. I don't like the idea of ending on a court case, but if anyone can do it, it would be these writers. So we'll see. Frankie Dima, thank you for the $9.99. Not sure if you guys already touched on this, but I think the part where Kim gets the parking pass from the automated machine is so subtly powerful. It really shows how far they've come in the timeline. Yeah, I said the same thing in my video. It's kind of on the nose in a way, but it's perfect. It's one of those situations where you can do that because the revelation the revelation carries so much information. You can look backwards or forwards, and it tells you so much about the place. And one of those things is this universe exists inside Albuquerque. It's a big part of the story. It's kind of in the background because it's a character-based drama, and we're always watching what they're doing and everything else. But yeah, I think I like the homage, and I like the idea that it's like a ghost town in a way for all the characters we know and cared about that inhabited that, but it keeps going. It keeps going on. Abdul Rahman, thank you for the 5. Which spinoff will interest next? I think it's enough, but love to hear your thoughts. Yeah, I think it's enough. I was over on watching Vince and Peter on Inside the Gilliverse, and I was surprised that Peter mentioned the Gus spinoff, because he was saying that we won't find out anything else about spoiler, I guess. That they won't be touching on what happened in Chile for Gus, and he said we have to leave it in case we do the spinoff. But I did read something yesterday about Vince saying, he's ready to move on, but you never know. They might come back. If he fails at everything else he does, I think is the way that he puts it, then there's a good chance that they might come back into this universe, because there always will be interest in them doing that. I like it. I enjoy it. I wouldn't be upset to see more, but I'm really kind of interested to see what they do outside of it too. Oliver, thank you for the 499. Do you think Lalo will kill Saul? Maybe it will be revealed it was actually Chuck that was buried underneath the lab and Ernie married Paige Novick. Absolutely possible. Why not? I feel like you asked the same question before, and I had the same. I don't know how to react to this action, but It might just be that we're getting close to the 3-hour mark and my brain is starting to dissolve. Jed Gould, thank you for the $9.99. Vince and Peter have made a unique point. If you are visualizing a murder, it's only a matter of will to kill. You guys don't want to mention that it can still happen to Saul. I don't think it's beyond him. And now I'm sorry that this is like an hour and 15 minutes after you ask the question that we finally get around to them, and that's how it works. Because I can't really pinpoint what we were talking about at the time where you gave these two comments. But I mean, I don't think that he's been portrayed as a killer, but of course that could change. So I hope that works. Scott Alderman, thank you for the $2. I thought Jeff panicked when he crashed into the cab. I wasn't 100% sure. It seems like listening to what they were saying is that it was a diversion. I was kind of on the fence when I watched it the first time too, so I know what you're saying, Scott. I was like, did he freak out and he just did that, or is this actually him? An audible on his part. I wasn't really 100% sure, but I do think from listening to what they said on the Insider podcast and stuff like that, that it was he did do it on purpose. Alex Plaza, thank you for the CLP 5000. A lot of people talked about Jimmy slipping ABQ word to Marion at the phone, but she was already getting it, given she said she had to talk long distance with people to help Jeff. Probably talk to Jimmy as Saul. I didn't pick up on that indication. I thought he made several mistakes. First he forgot about Nippy. Then he said he was never in Albuquerque. Then he came back around. I thought that the way that it played out, I mean, I really liked the idea because I had a hard time understanding how she would come across any information that would be helpful to actually, give up his, who he was. So I really liked the idea that Albuquerque con man in Ash Jeeves, which is a throwback, all of its own Ash Jeeves. But I guess I was a little bit low. I was a little bit behind the curve because I went and I looked. I put those words into Google, and people had already figured out that they would put that commercial on YouTube and in the time between the episode and when I tried it, so that those were the top results. But I mean, it's possible she talked to Jimmy as Saul. I don't know how, I don't know how that really would change things at this point. It's just sort of one of those things that if you think that's the case, then you can, and if not, it still makes sense for her to get to their how they showed us, how they laid out more directly in the actual episodes. Are we going to get an explanation on the diamonds in the Band-Aid box? Do we need one, or is it just the easiest way for him to hide his wealth? I don't think we need one. I'd be okay if they gave us one. I think it's one of the many different ways. I think in his conversation with Francesca, it shows that he was diversified. Besides just putting some in the wall and putting some up in the drop ceiling, he was throwing his money around in different ways to hide it. He knew that things might eventually come back around on him. So I think this is just one of the many ways. We'll see. Yep. Thank you. Maybe not Banksy for the $5. Yep. David Hatfield, thank you for the 846. Other than a Kim prequel, what characters or storyline do you see as a logical progression in the Breaking Bad universe as a special or series? I don't know. I mean, there's so many different all the side characters are pretty fascinating, so you could go in a lot of different directions with those. As main characters, I think the general consensus is Kim or Gus, because he has a long backstory that we don't know all the details about. But Beyond that, I don't know. Like I said, I think side characters would be interesting, but we don't. There's too many of them to list off all at once here. Sue Cronmiller, thank you for the $5. Who would Saul see in prison in this timeline? Tuco Salamanca. Who else? Well, Tuco will be out by Breaking Bad, so and then he'll be dead. So a lot of them are all dead. I mean, I don't know. No one comes to the top of my head. Like if he went in as Gene, I don't know. I don't know what that actually opens up as far as that's concerned. Nothing as far as I can tell. Manda Ruiz 619. Thank you for the $2. How much how much Sandpiper money did Saul get? He got million. 1.7 million, I think, is what they thought it was at the end. It may have been more. It may have been more than 2 million by the end, but I'm not sure. They did reference it in this episode and the fact that Kim didn't want her part of it, so I don't know how that changes things, but it was pretty obvious he got it with the mansion, but now we know for sure. Esteban Garcia, thank you for the $4.99. What predictions do you have about Walt's appearance? If Saul goes to trial, will Anna Gunn testify? She could, if that was the case. It doesn't seem absolutely necessary, but she knew him. She knew what he did. She was part of that. She made her deal based on the lottery ticket of being able to give up Hank and Gomi's location to the DEA. So I've gone over this a million times. I don't really have a great prediction. It just has to be about what Saul is thinking and how he reacts to his situation at the end, more than about Walt or filling in the blanks as far as Breaking Bad, as far as I'm concerned. Maybe something around the situation with Brock, if you had to pick one, but there's a lot of different ways they could go with it. Silver Scale, thank you for the $5. Will Gene escape with a pickup from that one guy who helped him hide? That guy he called for extraction at the start of the season. That guy, I believe you're referring to, is Ed the Disappearer. There's a hint that he might try to do that in the teaser that came in the mid credits, but I'm not sure. The actor who played Ed is passed away after they made El Camino, so they couldn't actually physically bring him back. But I think the idea of what we were talking about, what Gil and I were talking about earlier, we don't want to see him doing that. We don't want to. We would rather him make the decision not to use that option if we're given the opportunity. Ali Saif, thank you for the SAR 25. Do you think it's fair for Jimmy to get jailed, while Jesse, who killed someone, got a happy ending? No, I mean, I don't expect the show to take things like that into consideration. Fair life isn't fair. I mean, that's not really how things work. So I wouldn't take what he got into my thinking about what Jimmy should or shouldn't get. I would hope that they would think about how try to make them feel like real characters in the real world and how things work there, and not sort of subscribe to a well, if this happens here, then that has to happen across the board for everybody else. And it's they have a lot more freedom than that, so I hope they would exercise it. Trader Chris, thank you for the $4.99. Can you read my $10 super chat about how Saul Goodman became a person of interest when everyone who knows is dead? Why did he run in the first place? I do think I read this now, and I apologize that it takes time to get to them. I like to let them. I like to answer all the questions, but I also like to let them open things up for conversation between me and my guests. So it takes a little bit of time. I do get to all of them. I will stay here and answer them all before I cut out, even after we're crossing this 3-hour threshold here. But yeah, I do believe I answered it at this point, and I'll just say sorry for the wait, but I hope it was worth it. Dan, New York, or Dan NY, I guess. Thank you for the $1.99. Kim and Jimmy make peace before both go to jail. Could be the case. I don't really want to see Kim go to jail, but I guess it's possible. I think it would be kind of a bad ending. But, if there was a reason, then I guess then they can do that. XYOS212, thank you for the $5. Burnett and Jeff feel jammed in, isolated at the end of the series, similar to the Nazis in Breaking Bad. I would have preferred established characters in the end. Well, there are not many established characters still alive, though. So I'm not sure who you wanted to step up. Like you wanted to be all about Kubi at the end, or who's another character? Skylar. It could have been about Skylar White. I'm not sure. I mean, I'm there's more than that, but I mean, I feel like whenever people have this idea, it's more about they want to spend more time not in where we're at in Gene's timeline, but maybe more back around like the cartel, and those people are all dead. So I'm not sure if that's what you meant or not. But I think that Burnett and Jeff worked for me. So I'm not coming from the same place, at least, It's a fair criticism. I mean, a lot of people felt the same way about the Nazis, like you bring up, but I mean, I wasn't a big fan of that, but it worked in for what it did. Nick Lemke, thank you for the $4.99. Mike back next week. His finale was perfect in 609, but then brought him back in 611, which seemed kind of inconsequential. Not sure there's time though. I thought he worked. I thought the way they brought him back kind of made the whole thing with bringing Walt and Jesse back in that timeline work a little better. I thought those scenes were complementary, so I didn't really have a problem with it. But the only reason why that I feel like it's necessary to go back to that timeline now is because I know that there's supposed to be another Walt appearance. So he could be connected to that, but other than that, I would feel fine if we don't see him again. But happy to see him if he does show up and there's a good reason for it. Oops. Sorry about that. Alex Dyer, thank you for the 5. Do you think it's possible Saul takes his own life, essentially going out on his own terms? It's a thing that really seems that doesn't really seem to go along with what the character is. It's something they used before with his brother. I mean, obviously with Nacho and some other characters too, but I mean, with his brother, I kind of don't like it for that reason. But that's just a personal, like there. It doesn't mean it can't happen. That's just a personal aversion that I have. Trem, thank you for the $5. What are the odds the vacuum cleaner guy plays Saul in hiding in Florida, working at Palm Creek? I think that the actual odds of that are pretty low, pretty low indeed. Could he orchestrate that? Maybe, but it doesn't sound like a very satisfying ending. Doesn't sound like he'd be dealing with what he's been burying all this time if he would orchestrate that. SEJ, thank you for the $4.99. Not sure if this has been asked. Do you expect the full theme song of BCS to play in the finale and or a third Something Stupid montage? I feel like if there would have been a third Something Stupid montage, it would have happened in this episode. I think they passed up on the opportunity for that. I mean, I guess they could show Gene running in the moments after he left Marion's place while Kim just goes back to her regular day at work. It would be a little bit weird, but you could maybe make that work. I don't really have any investment in them playing the full theme song of BCS. I've heard it. I understand that I mean, it's good. I like the song. I don't really know what it adds to the actual story or how that, how that's anything other than, some if you know about it and you heard it and you like it, then you get to hear it. Other than that, I don't know what it would really add to the story. Alex Middleton, thank you for the 9.99. On Talking Saul last night, Bob Odenkirk described the last episode in 3 words when asked, "One hard truth." How do you interpret this clue? I didn't get to see it. I didn't hear that until right this minute. Um, my my knee-jerk reaction is that he's responsible. He didn't. Yeah, I don't know. One hard truth. The word one, that qualifier of one there makes it pretty difficult. I mean, you pretty much have to commit to what that one thing might be. And Jimmy's such a complicated character. That's not easy to do. I don't know. If something comes up by the time I get to the end of these, I'll circle back around to it. But right now, nothing jumps right in. Nothing comes straight to mind. Thanks for bringing it up though, because like I don't get to see that here, so I'm glad to know that that's out there. BLK_Regina_George. Thank you for the 4.99. Love and appreciate the content. Love when Howard's wife asked Kim, "What was it all for?" Do you think Kim shared an elaborate plan with her? This is a choice that I wanted to bring that up earlier, so we could discuss because it's an interesting choice. I think on the one hand, we know what Kim would say. Um, she can't really give her a good answer. Nothing more than was already in what she said. Like I've gone back and looked at what's on the paper, and it lays it out pretty evenly. So it's interesting. I don't have a great answer. I don't think I think that when she asked her why she's doing this, I think that the thing that she should say is because it's the right thing to do, and she regrets what happened before, the way that she handled it before. Specifically, when you say, "Do you think Kim shared an elaborate plan with her?" I don't think so. That wasn't my guess. My guess is that she was there, that she kind of held it together, and then we see her breakdown later is an indication that she was accomplishing what she came there to accomplish. So I expect that whatever she told her didn't derail anything. It was the best that she thought she could, and there was some satisfaction in that. And then then she really experiences the emotion that she's been held down as a result later. That as a result of that later. Brendan G, thank you for the $5. Big fan from Australia. Is there any chance Jimmy gives the diamonds to Mike's family somehow? I think just as an idea, there was that you could have thought that, but I don't see how we get there after the end of 612. Like I don't really. He's on the run. He's fighting for survival. I don't know how you get to the point where all of that has been put aside and he has a chance then to find out where Mike's family's at and give them that. Fred Miglorini, thank you for the 4.99. Instead of Gene transitioning to color, how about they show Saul leaving the vacuum store and transition to black and white? Yeah, I mean, that would fit in with the other, that was my initial idea of what I thought, where they thought they might show Walt. Uh, Gil brought this up earlier, and if they showed him in the thing, so I guess they could do that. They could show that color turning to black and white on his way out. It might be fitting for people who never saw Breaking Bad to kind of see how that makes sense. But other than that, I don't know what to say. It's a good idea, Fred, but I'm not sure if we'll see it. Steve Bob JD, thank you for the 4.99. Why do you think that Gene didn't kill Marion? Was killing someone too much for him? Did he care about Marion or something else? We touched on this a few times already. I don't know that we know for sure. I think the actual answer is because she said, "I trusted you," and that pushed a button inside him. How you interpret that, is up to you, and we'll probably find out a little bit more in the next episode. But I think that was the actual thing. The words that she chose, and her being who she was, her being an elderly woman that trusted him, and him seeing the dirtiness that's involved with that, on some level, on how he thought he had it under control. He thought that he wasn't harming anyone but himself, and blah blah. Just sort of, it's just all sort of fits into the addiction thing, and I think that has a lot to do with it. Brandon Goldberg, thank you for the 4.99. What do you think the significance of the diamonds he has is? I think it's another way that there may be a specific significance on how he got them, but I think it's just another thing in the and the portfolio of different tools that he put together to hide his wealth that he had. I don't have a better idea for that. It's just sort of all I got there. It's one of the many different ways that he hid his money, and it happens to be convenient because you can move around pretty easy with that. And he had to run away from Albuquerque. ADHD whiskey, thank you for the $5. Black and white dreams often symbolize a sense of loss. Therefore, if you keep dreaming in black and white, you feel saddened by losing friendship or love. Okay, that's not something I've ever heard before. I've never done a lot of investigation on the symbolism of dreams, but it sounds solid. I'm not one that has a lot of dreams, so I'm not great for doing that. Like, I couldn't tell you if the few dreams that I remember recently, I can't remember if they were black and white or color or much other detail. I don't have a lot of vivid dreams. Joe Carter, thank you for the 15 Australian. Appreciate that. Nothing to go along with it, so I'll just say thanks. Peppa, thank you for the NOK22. Happy ending with Saul moving to Belize. Happy for who, Peppa? Happy for who? How would that be a happy ending? From what perspective would that be? Sushant Ratnap. Oh man, I'm sorry. Sushant Ratnaparki, thank you for the 200. I know this is yellow, so I know it's not the minimum. So thank you for that. BB ending had definite conclusions for to who Hank, Jesse, the family, and Walt. Here the focus will be on concluding storylines, or will it be open-ended, leading to multiple interpretations? I lean towards open-ended, because I think it makes more sense for where this character is. I mean, if he dies, then okay, then that's not very open-ended. But other than that, I think that because we've known him for so long and we've seen all these different parts of his life interact, and they put it all together. I like open-ended better. We have a lot of definite conclusions. Like we know what happened to Howard. We know what happened to Nacho. We know what happened to Lalo, Gus, Mike, and all these different people. So yeah, we'll see. But I lean towards to him, him reckoning with what he hasn't been able to reckon with, and hopefully there's some sort of redemption in that. And then we can decide. We can make up what comes after in our own minds. Lunar Orbit, thank you for the $5 Canadian. Do you think Jeff crashed the cab on purpose to distract the police so Gene could escape, or was it pure nerves? Yeah, I mentioned this earlier. My initial take while watching it was, I don't know. I don't know if that was supposed to be he just freaked out because of the pressure. They didn't really set it up that great if that was the case, but it was such a weird choice of thing to do that I thought that was possible. But I do believe after listening to the Insider podcast and other things that they intended it for him to be, he did that, as a he did that on purpose as a distraction so that Gene can make it outside of the house. Alexander Kepchar, thank you for the $4.99. Crazy thought, Jimmy ends up in court, stripped of any all wealth, so needs public defender appointed. Fitting punishment is LIP, life in prison, but Chris Esposito is the public defender. Could be. That would tie together those things that you bring up there. Like I've said a few times already in this stream, it's not the outcome I'm hoping for, but if they, if anybody can do it, they could do that, and I'll judge it on its how it works in the moment rather than just not being the thing I want to happen, happening. Johan Gamble Putty, thank you for the $4.99. Flashback. Young Jimmy gets caught taking money from the till by his mom, who looks him in the eye and says, "I trusted you." Yeah, I mean, there could be the literal thing there. It's funny because this opens up a whole different can of worms that I used to think about a lot that I don't really expect to get much closure on. Like I always wondered if Chuck's idea about this was correct. I always wondered if that's sort of his original sin as far as Chuck's concerned was, stealing that money. And I remember at the time there was some idea that maybe his mom was bad at the books, or she was cooking the books, and the way that played out was that Chuck was mistaken in thinking that, it was Jimmy stealing all along. I mean, we saw Jimmy steal a little bit, but I always wondered if that was the case, that he really stole as much as he thought, because that's a lot of money for a little kid, especially at that time. I hadn't never really thought about it on this level of like, maybe Marion makes him think about his mother. It would feel a little bit it would feel a little bit out of left field, but we'll see, you know what I mean? Like there is stuff to pull on there. There's his, his mother's dying and the effect that had on Chuck and all that other stuff. So I can see where you're coming from. It's just not something that occurred to me until right this moment. Mr. Dude 79, thank you for the $1.99. I fear for Gene's, Saul's, Jimmy's life. Well, I hear you. I don't think he'll die, but it's, as we mentioned a few times already in this, it's definitely possible. So I hear what you're saying. My Echo, My Shadow, and Me, thank you for the $1.99. Jean's not the kind of girl to give up like that. Yeah, I didn't even get to mention this when I was doing the recap, that scene, because there's so much other stuff going on right there. It's an underrated choice to have him do that. And what I really liked about the scene and what sticks with me is that's the kind of song that even if you don't know the words, like Jimmy definitely doesn't know anything but the they made it clear that he only knows the chorus. That's a song that you sing along with when the chorus comes on, because it's just that kind of song, you know what I mean? So I thought that was a pretty funny little addition to kind of, kind of give us a little bit, lighten things up a little bit before they go all the way dark in that next scene. Ebert's $2. I think a Lalo prequel spinoff would be great. I would have agreed with you before, but ever since we got to the end of the Lalo story, I don't really find myself longing for more of it. I don't know if that makes sense, but fascinating character, great character. I'm not saying that the way that his story ended kind of took away from that. I think he was a good character. I would watch a show about him if they made it, for sure. I don't know. Whenever his story came to a conclusion, I just didn't find myself wanting more. I just felt like it just felt good the way that where it ended, how it ended. We knew it was inevitable, and so I was happy that they could at least make it an exciting thing whenever we knew almost exactly how it was going to happen too. So I guess it just didn't make me think, oh, okay, now I want to learn so much more about this guy, although it would be fun to watch. Raphael Baker, thank you for the $7.99 Australian. Could see Walt give some advice when they were in Ed's basement together. Yes. This has come up a couple of times since you asked the question, so I hope you were around to hear that. But I do think that that's a thing. That was actually before I expected to see those two characters together. That was my initial thought, was that they could give us a little more in that. And then whenever I heard it was both of them, but before the time whenever I found out that they had scenes together and scenes apart, I kind of lost interest. But it's definitely still one of the better ideas out there, I think. David L, thank you for the $4.99. Thoughts on how the Bet's Black Book will come into play? I think it already did. I think that their little talk, Mike's talk about the second story man and all that, I thought that referred back to it. I'm not expecting to see more about the Black Book. I think they set it up that Caldera was going to sell it. They set it up that it was going to be in Jimmy's mansion. He was going to get it eventually. I don't know that they're going to connect dots on how he paid him for that. I think it makes sense for him to go and get it once he decides, after Kim leaves, and he decides that he wants to throw himself more into the criminal lifestyle. Underboss Films, thank you for the $1.99. Clearly, Jeff was rewritten for Pat. Writers lying. Okay. I take them at their word, but you can call them liars if you want to. And it looks like we made it to the end of the rainbow. Oh, James Egan, thank you for the $7.99 Australian. Would love to see a fan edit of all the genes and episodes into one movie. I mean, there's one out there that has all the cold opens stitched together on YouTube that you can find. But yeah, it would be cool to see it after we get the conclusion at the end. And guys, I want to thank you all for showing up. It's been 3.5 hours and I'm way past my limit. Sorry for kind of trailing off a little bit. But I am going to have to get out of here before I space out completely. So thanks for coming out. I will try to do one on Saturday because it is the last episode. I want to do that. I'm going to be pretty busy, but I'll try to make it happen. If not, we'll definitely be back here next Tuesday, and we'll be talking about the finale. I can't wait for that. And thank you for coming out. And right in there at the buzzer. Okay. Sanction HJ, thank you for the 200. Why should everyone who breaks bad end up losing everything? What is the storyteller really trying to tell to all of us who are trying to set things right? I don't think that they have to lose everything. I think actually, if you really look at it, Walt and Jesse got off kind of easy. You know, that Walt got to make a lot of things right before he died. And in reality, he was dying anyways because of cancer. So all of that could have never happened and he could have just died, or he could have not, he couldn't. I don't think it's too gloomy, you know. Um, I don't think it's as dark as it sounds. I think the only thing the storytellers are trying to tell us is that life works in a way that when you make decisions and those decisions have consequences. Because it's dramatic as a narrative for television and a dramatic TV series. Of course, they're going to lean towards those consequences being substantial and exciting to watch. But I think if you sort of zoom out a little bit, what's interesting is just how people make decisions and how people react to things that happen to them, and how those decisions lead them different places. And I don't think I think there's a little bit of morality that fits into that, but I don't think it's overly moral in its message. It's just sort of like, we're watching this happen, we're watching it together, and we can relate because we're all humans and we see humanity in what they do. So all right, guys, thanks for watching. I will talk to you